Book 7. Galaxy. Somewhere deep in space, a small machine with alien markings nearly collided with a familiar rounded shuttle, pushing them into a spin that took their glad-to-hearted pilot a great deal of effort and skill to control. For a moment, the future of all known civilizations hung in the balance as Mechion metal scraped against Agrosian acrylics. Had the Agrosian shuttle but known it, their prize was briefly in their grasp, and they could have blown the alien shuttle out of the sky in nanoseconds, gaining 10 extra planets into their colony as a result. However, in their haste, the Agrosians didn't stop to take proper note of where the shuttle was going, and assumed in their arrogance that any ship flown by their enemy would be more like their own, sleeker and faster, not to mention flying away from Decreeta as fast as possible, not going around it to other planets. So, without a second thought, the Agrosians flew off, little knowing how close they had come to conquering the whole of the side of the universe. The 70-odd quadzillion inhabitants of this sector of space had just had the luckiest escape of their generation. Or at least, they had for now.
Wrong turning, idiot.
Cursed Queen Calixta to a hapless crew.
This is the wrong star system completely. Whoops,
Said Gosh.
Gosh.
Said Whoops.
Uh-oh, my bad.
Said Bosh. All three of them braced themselves for disintegration.
Well, I suppose one stupid inferior alien star system does look like another.
Sighed Queen Calixta.
We still have time on our hands, don't we?
She put the national anthem back on, dreaming of the day when Miss Earthling would write her a new verse, and wondering what could possibly rhyme with Calixta. Or maybe she should go with Queen.
Like a dream, our royal queen, who single-handedly brought down the international peace team. She did it all so very well, she could destroy a planet just by ringing a bell. Calixta be bad. Calixta be bad.
Eleron! Cried Sharon, wedged up between me and the back seat. Do something! She saw that I was paralysed with fear and went to slap me out of it, only to lose it and hurtle it to the back of Auntie Sue instead. Grab hold of the nearest alien to you! I yelled. Several pairs of limbs shot out as everyone tried to grab onto something. Use Mrasianbrat's antlers! I yelled as Geraldine nearly fell through the giant hole in the shuttle's side. Finally the juddering and shuddering stopped, and we all came to a rest with most of us safe now, with Auntie C holding on firmly to Quincy and Cornelius. What about Jennifer? Asked Geraldine, panicked as she watched the glad-to-hearted falling into space. Quincy, do you still have those extendable arms? I yelled at the Mechion.
Got it.
He shot them out of the shuttle and grabbed hold of the squeaking glad-to-hearted. Lucky for us, the glad-to-hearteds have such big lungs and can survive longer periods in space than anybody. Evolutionary, all the better to squeak and run away, fast. Safe in Quincy's arms, the glad-to-hearted was pulled to safety, where we made a fuss over her.
Now, what do we plug the hole with?
Asked Quincy.
We can't travel much further like this.
Do we still have those foosballs on board? I asked. One of those things is about the right size, and Auntie C, if you can fill up the rest of the hole with your knitting to keep it in place. No, said the Clandesprat despondently, but this was meant to be a 12-headed victory jumper for all of us to wear when this was all over. You could knit us another when this is all over, I said, but if we don't repair the shuttle, there certainly won't be any victory. I turned to Geraldine. Didn't we have some spare marshmallows from the Dewsbury Giants they packed for our lunch? That's the perfect sealant. Soon the hole was filled, thanks to the combined efforts of the crew. Even the Habridat foosball and Dewsbury Giant lunches had come in handy, and those aliens weren't even here. We all collapsed in a thankful heap at the bottom of the shuttle, Jennifer still taking in deep breaths, while Auntie C fed a vegetable she'd found at the bottom of the Dewsbury Giant knapsack. Oh, well done, Eleron, said Geraldine. You see, you are the right person to lead us after all. What were you worrying about? Hardly, I said. I was useless, too tiny to do anything practical to help. It was you lot that did all the work, and very well too, I might add. Fat lot of good we'd have been without you there to shape us, though, said Auntie C. Why, when I think about what disaster could have befallen us all if it hadn't been for you. But then you were always a quick thinker, Eleron. Why, I remember when you were a baby, Would anyone like to see some photos? He was very cute indeed. Oh, so cute. You wouldn't believe how cute. Oh, look at my little top. Oh, cute. Not now, please, I said hastily. Those aliens might still be out there. To our great surprise, though, the alien shuttle simply carried on to space, seemingly oblivious to the damage that had been caused to us. We waited breathlessly for a while, wrestling with the inside of the shuttle until, with each other's help, we were all the right way up again. The near crash had caused a great deal of damage to Auntie C's knitting and scared poor Jennifer nearly out of her wits, but otherwise we all seemed to be unharmed. The speed with which their ship had gone past us and the length of time it took to recover our own meant that we had lost all trace of the aliens out of our windows or even on our scanners by the time we were right side up again, long enough to look. For a tense few seconds we paused, wondering if these aliens were just teasing us and if they would come back to get us. We huddled together, with the lights off, for several minutes that felt like an eternity, as in the silence I heard 7 very different respiratory systems all working intensely, yet somehow all synchronized in fright. Finally, it was Ariadne who spoke up.
Phew,
was all she said. The next voice in the darkness was Quincy's.
Logically, I would have to say, but they've gone.
Logically and visibly, I think that you're right, I said, sitting up. Well, my dear, said Auntie C, I can't tell you how discombobulated I made me feel. The fright when my ship passed so close to us doing a quadrillion miles an hour. If I didn't believe your descriptions of them before, I do now, Geraldine. They're clearly a very advanced species technologically, and we are right to fear them. I wonder though why they didn't just incinerate us all when they had the chance. Maybe they still need Eleron alive for him to surrender to them, Geraldine said thoughtfully. I don't think they even knew I was here, I said, even more thoughtfully. I don't think they know what shuttle to look for yet. After all, this one was a Mechion invention once, even if it was made a bit bigger and given to the Dewsbury giants to use. We've passed hundreds like it down on the planet. Presumably they've passed others like it in space too. Maybe the IPO gave them a description of the one we took to Deuces, so they are looking for that. Or maybe they assume we've been a posh gold-coloured one like the ones on Earth. If these creatures really are looking for me, then all they'll know about us is from the Futsal broadcast. I'm out several days late, so much so that I would only just have left for Earth right now at most. How far away from Earth exactly are we, anyway? Jennifer looked at the map.
Not very far.
She squeaked.
In fact, it's the next planet over.
They overshot, I laughed. Oh, that superior technology. And we missed a whole planet. I suppose they'd only ever been there once and didn't know where to find it. Their navigation systems won't have been programmed for this side of the universe, the way ours are. We're safe, at least for now.
I do believe you're right. That's the most logical explanation,
Quincy concluded. Now what do we do, Eleron? Asked Geraldine, and I felt 6 heads turning to look at me expectantly. I suddenly felt guilty again that so many people were putting their trust in me, a proven fraud. But their kind words had helped my confidence a lot. We go on, I conclude, probably skip Earth for now, and hope that we're leading those aliens on a merry chase around the galaxy. We're 3 days ahead of them now, after all.
Universal entry, pause, AB54493649391. Rouse Universal Systems key code, acting, President Eleron. Headline, mission to Habitat, retrieved from the Universal Records of his. Scooby-Doo,
sang our newest member to nothing we could hear, as we rattled along to our next port of call. Miss McGrumph wasn't what I had expected from knowing Moldothas, perhaps because of the informal setting. Indeed, she was almost jovial, though she still didn't do much talking. It was just as well then that she was sat next to Auntie C, who was talking 19 to the dozen. My dear, what blessed antlers! They remind me of the stag I saw on my last visit to Earth. Have you ever been there? Oh, you must go, my dear, you must go. Lovely place to visit. Some of the cutest animals in the universe. Have you ever seen a piker? It looks just like a glamper harned, only even cuter. Or a squirrel, and like Archibald, but with tails, and they climb trees really fast. Really fast. Oh, you wouldn't believe how fast. Oh, no. I liked Earth a lot when I went to visit, though between you and me, I'm rather glad I'm not living there. No offence to you, Geraldine. You seem like one of the sensible ones. I always said you can't possibly isolationist tendencies in the universe this big, but, well, humans are just one of those species that always seems to think we know best. Still, no offence to Jeremy, their Eleron can be like that too, and he ends up too far into one of his human moods. Oh, he does him, so does him, let me tell you about the time. Auntie C rattled on like this for some time as the poor McGrumph tried to get the odd word in edgeways, and failed. Before too long, we were at our next destination, Habridas. I'd been dreading our mission on this world. It would be hard to urge a Habridat to do anything, never mind go into battle. Still, it was only fair, and indeed diplomatic, to give every planet a chance to join us on our quest. Habridas looked like a barren rock from the outside, not unlike the Earth's moon, I noted, and there were no visible signs of buildings even when we were very close to landing. So much so that I began to wonder if our shuttle's navigation systems had become damaged in the near crash earlier. It turned out to be more prosaic than that, though. Within several billion years of existence, the Habridats hadn't really gotten round to decorating or changing their planet at all. It seemed to have been untouched in all that time, still as nature had created it. Indeed, this planet hadn't seemed to have got round to finishing off either the Endurance or Insurgence statues yet either. All we saw were 4 pairs of feet, 2 each for a human, a Clandesprat and a Mrasianbrat, each of them ending somewhere near the knee. Rather than living in tall buildings like the rest of us, the Habridats merely seemed to laze about in the sun and the craters left by meteors long ago and underneath the flimsiest of shack huts. And I recalled Horace telling me that his species had never had to adapt to rain. I could see why. The planet was hot, being so close to their sun, but in an entirely different way to Ziggurat's 3, which was far away, but heated by 3 suns at once. No wonder Habridats never felt like doing anything either. This heat was so oppressive, it had begun to make me feel lethargic too. The trouble was, the way the planet had been left largely untouched by Habridas' wing meant that we had no way of knowing where to land. And after panicking with a few false starts and we nearly ran a few Habridats down, we finally settled in what had looked from a distance like a sea, but it turned out to be a series of trees that looked like giant cotton wool buds. After getting stuck and having to climb down, which was particularly difficult for Auntie C, we found ourselves in a field surrounded not by Habridats, but a host of strange-looking creatures on all 4s, perhaps the height of an earth cow, but who behaved more like an earth dog, and who each had snouts that more closely resembled earth anteaters. "What is this place?" asked Geraldine, as she absent-mindedly patted one of these strange creatures on the nose.
Zoo,
said Mrasianbrat proudly. "I know what this is," I said as I tried to stop one licking my wings. "It's an Argibraf park. The original Argibrafs that all the others are descended from. I remember reading about them on the Universal. It looks so different in the wild."
What's an Argibraf?
asked Quincy as he tried to shelter a frightened Jennifer from being licked to death, and one took his robotic arm in its mouth.
These things look utterly ridiculous.
"I think you've just met one," I laughed. They were a group of animals that hatched several years after the Habridats, but one from a similar pool of life. Being so much younger, and similarly lazy I might add, they haven't fully evolved yet. Some of them have metamorphosed into sentient beings, so we know they're capable of thought, though these ones are probably more at the level of one of your monkeys, Geraldine, and someone you bring home for dinner. The story goes that the first Habridats to travel the universe took a pair with them for company, but they weren't looked after properly, so they sneaked off and had lots of children on lots of different planets. Interestingly, they all look different depending on the planet they grew up on, and have evolved at different rates on different planets. Something to do with the distance from the sun, or gravity, or something. There are some on Mars, in fact, bright spotted ones, but they're not on Mechion or Earth yet, I don't think. And no one seems to know where they came from originally, before they even arrived on Habridas. There must be a whole planet of them out there somewhere.
They're so much bigger than the ones on Black Hades, not to mention spottier. There's a lot of them too,
said Jennifer, backing away from them.
1022,
said Mrasianbrat proudly, counting.
at least in you.
Why so many, Eleron? asked Geraldine. Other species might have got rid of them as vermin, but the Habridats never did. Too much effort, I suppose.
Oh, they are so cute,
said Auntie C, finally disentangling herself from a cotton bud tree.
I always longed to have a pet of my own, ever since visiting Earth and discovering all the many distinctive animals they have over there. How strange that such a variety of life should be found in this section of the universe more than the others. But we know, of course, I do wonder what these aliens half of the universe might look like, and what pets they might have.
Nothing like we've ever seen, shuddered Geraldine. They're really tall and scary and don't seem the type to look after animals for fun. Not like these cute things. They're so sweet. I want one for a pet too when this is all over. I hear they don't take much looking after, I replied. They're laid back, quiet and rather gentle. Not unlike the habitats themselves. I wonder if every planet has animals that take on their own characteristics. Auntie C chuckled.
We have fireflies on Ziggurat 3, but you don't see them, as they only come out for the half hour of night, bursting full of energy and consuming lots of fuel to no particular purpose, or swarming in cliques. Yes, that sounds like a clandestine, all right. Oh, and we have night hippos, huge and lumbering, yet surprisingly dainty and speedy when we want to be. And I'm saying nothing.
She let out a full clandestine giggle. Geraldine laughed. I had a cat once, but used to be incredibly stubborn and lived in its own world, oblivious of everything and everybody else. It didn't seem to notice if I turned up or not, how much effort and money I spent taking care of it, and spent its time using up resources and scratching the furniture around till it was unusable. Come to think of it.
We have insects,
Squeaked Jennifer.
they're really tiny, so they don't scare us.
We have pet robots.
Said Quincy.
They are much easier to train than animals.
Archer is the form of animal companion consistent pirates for the sisters by replicating our legalese,
Said Cornelius.
Legalese?
Nodded Mariadne. The handful of skinny shy algebraphs on our planet aside, we don't have any pets on Mars, unless we import them, I sighed. We Mrasianarts seem meant to be on our own. Eventually we were interrupted by a habitat that stumbled over to us and helped us out of the last parameter park, shooing off an algebraph that had taken a liking to Auntie C's shoes.
That's not for parking in.
Said the habitat slowly, leaning against the fence.
That's the feeding pen. That's used for feeding the algebraph. Only you're not meant to feed them bits of your cells. We've got food for that.
And he threw something that looked a little like hay down towards the animals, causing the algebraphs to run off with what sounded like a cross between a purr and a bark. No, I said, brushing myself down. We're not here for feeding. We took a bit of a wrong turning. We're actually here on official business. The habitat eyed us all up and down, covered in hay and cotton tree buds.
You don't look like you're on official business,
He drawled.
or as if you're at a fancy dress ball.
No, really, we are, I started again, but the habitat held his arms up.
I'm tired of this practical joke.
He said,
Not one of my favourites. I rated him 2 out of 10.
and he got a device out of his pocket that he proceeded to poke at, and a hologram of a number in habitat eats came out of the ether and perched atop of our heads.
Goodbye.
He added.
I'm bored now. And I'm you by now.
Wait, what? I asked. This wasn't a joke. This is serious. A matter of life and death. But the habitat just yawned and walked off.
Oh.
Thankfully, our eyes got used to the heat haze, a natural formation other technologically advanced planets had solved, but which the habitats had never got around to doing anything about. And we could see enough to go ask the next nearest habitat the way to their leader, and to see if they were expecting us. He shrugged. So we asked another. She shrugged too. My worst fears seemed to be realised. Nobody seemed to care at all about our quest, or the fact that the universe was under threat. Oh, this is ridiculous, I spluttered. I knew the habitats were laid back, but this is taking things to a whole new level. Don't any of them care about the end of the universe? Finally, we found a male habitat who said he would help. When he reached out to point at a nearby tree, his wing fell off. Alarmed, I went to rush off and get help, but he just laughed at me.
If you could see your face.
He roared, slapping me on the back. Too late I remembered what else the Universal had said about habitats, that they were the planet of practical jokers. Suddenly I felt I understood Horace and his background a lot more. As aggravated as I'd been at his lackadaisical and relaxed behaviour, if everyone on this planet acted like this, then he would surely be one of the more driven and motivated of these creatures. A female habitat came over to us then to see what was so funny, and pointed to us and laughed.
Such funny faces,
She said.
You all remind me of the joke. These 7 mystical aliens walk into a bar. The barman says, why the long face? The Mechion answers, genetics.
None of us found the joke particularly funny, but the two Habradats were now laughing uproariously, rolling around on the floor.
I say.
Another Habradat continued.
My Mechion's got no nose. How does he spell?
Oh, that's easy.
Interrupted Quincy.
Our genetic design involves an inner tube that doesn't have the same exterior markings as other species on your planet because our world's natural gravitational pull.
He trailed off as everyone was looking at him.
No,
Said the young Habradat, confused.
the answer's awful.
The Habradats were back rolling on the floor again.
But we have no skin,
Said the Mechion, confused.
and no sweat gland, so therefore no spell.
But he got no response from the Habradats, who were by now hysterical, having seen the look on his face. This is no time for laughing, I said. Be serious. The future of half the universe is at stake. The Habradats found this even funnier.
You're so tiny.
Said the bear one.
What species are you anyway?
Do you really not know? I'm your Humrasianart president, I said proudly, pulling myself up to my full height. But this just set the Habradats off into even more paroxysms of laughter, beaten only by how much they laughed when Auntie C finally made her way over the fence and waddled across to us. Thankfully, another Habradat waved us over. Oh, good, I said. This is most urgent. Please take me to your leader. He thought for a few seconds, then pointed carelessly in such a vague direction he could have been pointing anywhere. Just then we became aware that an elder Habradat was wandering agonisingly slowly out of the crowd over to us, and I remembered what Horace had told me once, that Habradats tend to become more serious with age. At last, I said, greeting him. I'm IPO President Eleron, and I must see your president now. The Habradat shook me by the wing, as I made sure to check that it was real this time.
How many Belobrats does it take to change a light bulb?
He said. We all looked at each other.
Man, they use gaslighting.
He said. With this, the Habradat was rolling around on the floor laughing. Peering closely, I found he was beckoning me down, so I leaned into him, hoping he would whisper something of use into my ear.
Why did the Mrasianart cross the road?
He said. I shook my head, confused.
Because they're so bad at boundaries, plus everybody walks all over them.
That makes no logical sense.
Puzzled Quincy, and Geraldine agreed. But I sighed. It does to me, sadly. The Mrasianarts do have a tendency towards oversharing and overcaring and not thinking of themselves. Our hearts are too big and our eyes too shut, whereas Belobrats always think of themselves first to the point of lying to others. I'm not sure the moment the universe is about to burn is the right time to be telling such jokes, though. Try saying that to him, scoffed Geraldine as we helped the Habradat up. Who are you, anyway?
I'm Horace, the junior president. Listen, there once was a cute Habradat who looked rather good in a hat. It perched on his head until he went to bed, whereupon he swapped it for a cap.
As the Habradat went back to rolling around on the floor again. What the? I asked, exasperated at the lack of seriousness with which our mission was being undertaken. It's a limerick, said Geraldine, an Earth invention. I heard they'd gone down particularly well on Habradat. Oh, I said sarcastically, how your planet must laugh.
Knock knock,
said the Habradat. What the? I started.
No,
He said, stamping his foot with mock rage.
you're not saying it right. You!
She said, pointing towards Mrasianbrat.
When I say knock knock, you say who's there, okay? Right? Knock knock? Who?
Said Mrasianbrat, confused.
Close enough.
The Habradat shrugged.
Dewsbury. Dewsbury, who?
Said Mrasianbrat.
Dewsbury, no, the doors are locked all the time.
More peals of laughter. This is the junior president, I groaned. Well, on Habradat must the full president be like?
I'm he,
Said an older Habradat, and while walking over to us.
Resident Horatio at your service. I saw you coming, and came as quickly as I could. However, as quick as my thoughts work these days, my body just can't keep up with them.
He finished, yawned, sighing.
Oh, I wish I could be like Hortense here again with that much energy for all the faults I now have. But I'm not the first Habradat to regret the silly folly of my youth.
Hortense got up and giggled.
You have to laugh, though. The universe is so absurd. What does it matter if I don't take it seriously? It will go about the same way whatever I feel about it, so I may as well enjoy myself.
Even when the universe is at stake, I asked.
No, of course so.
Hortense said.
All the better to enjoy these last few moments the way I wish I'd spent more of my life. Enjoying myself. Do you think you're safe from any greater scale of tragedy just because you took it seriously and worried about it? The more you worry, the shorter you live. It's a proven fact. So where's the sense in that? Now, would you all like to hear some dumb blonde human joke?
You, said Mariadne to Geraldine with a big smile on her face. No, said the Earthling quickly. There was nothing I could say, so instead I turned back to Horatio. Did you get the message from Ducius? Have you fulfilled our request?
I think so,
said Horatio.
Now, where did I put the papers?
Oh, please come on, said Geraldine.
The furtherance of your action is currently imperative,
pleaded Cornelius.
Oh, yes,
said Horatio.
They're over here.
And walked over to a crater where they were being held down with a bit of Habridas rock. A good job we came to this planet near the end, or we'd have fallen so behind time, muttered Geraldine. I deliberately gave this planet some of the most time, I said. I thought they'd need it. I also gave them the simplest job to do. Good delegating, Eleron, whispered Geraldine. What about the people? I asked Horatio, who was dawdling behind us. Did my message go through? Did they know we were under attack?
Oh, yes,
said the President.
They're all very worked up and stressed about it. Can't you tell?
I looked over at Geraldine, who frowned in tandem with me. All we could see were Haberdats partying, picnicking, sleeping, or rolling on the floor with laughter. We stared at where Horatio's wing was pointing, two rather bland pieces of rock that, nevertheless, were a good imitation of Haberdat wings. Wow, they're finished. And they're perfect, I said, as Quincy got out his anti-gravity device and moved them into our shuttle. Thank you so much.
I realised that time would be of the essence,
said Horatio.
So I only took 20 naps today to ensure they were completed on time.
These are for you, said Geraldine, handing out the gift that the Grumps had provided.
Ooh, lovely,
said Horatio, handling the goop before passing it to a passing Haberdat.
This is just what we need for our practical jokes. Oh, this battle scene here, I hope will do. It emits a series of practical jokes, one after another. Whoopee cushions, fake rubber spiders, ink on the face, fake spots. Oh, it does them all if I lock onto the right target.
I replied, not quite sure how to end that sentence.
It is, isn't it?
Drawled Horatio back.
Those moments when no one's hit them. I can't wait. And now, weren't you due to make a speech?
Yes, I said, looking round me, to where there were no Haberdats waiting.
Oh, well,
said Horace.
We don't really like speeches anyway, so let's not and just say we did. I'll be sure to tell everyone what a fine speech it was, Eleron. And now I look forward to travelling with you to your destination, assuming, of course, you don't mind me getting 400 winks on the back of your shuttle. Oh, going without sleep for so long has made me really drowsy, and it's been a whole hour without a nap.
That, of course, was fine by us.
Oh, yes.
Horatio added.
Nearly forgot.
And he picked up a parcel that he had been carrying.
This is for our next destination.
It looked like a series of dice. Seeing I looked confused, he added.
This is one of our favourite games. Pass the algebras. We could play it for hours. Why, I've even been known to delay my nap times I get so engrossed in this. I hear that the Mrasianarts like using these as fortune-telling devices and buy them in this pricey import. I thought you'd like it. It's a token of goodwill, you see.
Brilliant, I said. Are you sure your planet can spare you, though? Horatio shrugged.
They'll have to, won't they? Because if we don't get on with it, then our life on this planet is over anyway. Oh, do hurry up. You other creatures are so slow sometimes.
Another Haberdat waved as we bid goodbye.
Remember our old saying? You may have to make your own bed, but anyone can lie in it. I think it's that time again. Good night. Someone waits me before the universe ends. I hate to miss it.
The shuttle containing Queen Calixta and Hive A had just landed on the same insignificant patch of Earth as before, after a slight detour around Alpha Centauri. Queen Calixta considered executing a navigator Bosch for messing up again. But no, she would need him to stay at home when this was all over, and it wouldn't do to execute too many of the Hive just yet. These Earthlings might surprise them and try a full-on mutiny, spurred on by this curious-sounding intergalactic president. After all, that's what she'd do in Eleron's shoes. As the Queen had expected, this planet seemed to be in disarray. The news about the Earth's potential destruction and slavery had got out, and there had been rioting and looting for days. So far, though, many of the humans remained ignorant of the true threat, having dismissed it as fake news, given that the only footage of the Agrosians' arrival had been shaky at best. On seeing the Agrosian shuttle reappear in the sky, though, suddenly everybody on the western half of the globe knew it to be true. Hordes of Earthlings were running around madly, while others were taking the bad news badly and attacking each other, even though this latest catastrophe, for once, had nothing to do with humans at all. Queen Calixta viewed the carnage with disgust. She liked it when aliens begged for their lives or offered to work extra hard in slavery. This sort of panic and chaos didn't serve her needs at all. It was just using up available resources. Her resources, which she preemptively thought often. Queen Calixta decided to deliver a speech to the Earth inhabitants, and they ran around madly trying to set up enough Agrosian speakers and amplifiers for her voice to travel around the entire globe. Picking up the microphone, she began to speak.
People of Earth, did you really doubt the word of your new ruler, Queen Calixta of the planet Agrosia? I invite you to hand over being known as Eleron, ruler of your inferior side of the universe, in order to secure your speedy surrender, along with your chief poet, Chuck Berry. If you do, then some of your lives may be spared.
They're not here, said confused American President Bo Chiden through a megaphone. Or at least, Chuck Berry's been dead 3 centuries, and President Eleron is on Decreeta.
Queen Calixta gnashed her teeth.
You dare defy me, Earthlings?
She asked.
Oh, remember, O Queen, you can't hurt anyone until you've given them a chance to hand themselves over to you, don't you know? Oh, cripes, struth, lumberduck,
whispered Posh.
I know that,
snarled Queen Calixta, swiping at the Agrosian. She turned back to the microphone.
If not, then this is a demonstration of how things will be for you.
So saying, the Royal One turned to Wash, who fired an anti-gravitational blender missile that went around the Earth. This device, which slowly covered the entire planet, gathered up the Earth's tallest man-made objects one by one and squashed them together. An invention the Agrosian was very proud of, but rarely got the chance to use. In one instant, the Burj Khalifa rose up from its home in Dubai to join onto China's Shanghai Tower, then combined with the Makkah Royal Clock Tower in Saudi Arabia, Malaysia's Petronas Towers, Vietnam's Landmark 81, and the gigantic 1,000-feet gold-sparkly diamond-encrusted statues of Bill Gates, Richard Branson, Elon Musk and Donald Trump that had been built in America. Finally, for good measure, the Big Ben Bell Tower, the Eiffel Tower and the Statue of Liberty were plonked on top. The whole congealed monstrosity was then plonked in the middle of Downing Street, where they rose into the sky and, just for good measure, were tall enough to take out the International Space Station with them. Oblivious to the destruction below, Queen Calixta continued speaking into a microphone.
You have only a small number of Earth days, and then either your president will sign your planet over to us for further plunder, or else every being on this planet will be delivered into space. I believe, having studied your biology and the distance of your sun, this wouldn't be at all pleasant for anyone left inside any of these inferior buildings. Be a good alien race now, and behave yourselves. Your queen has spoken.
And so, in the midst of all the carnage and chaos, and congratulating herself for a job well done, Queen Calixta ordered her shuttle be turned around for Mars. With so many people on our shuttle now, we had been forced to move to another seat, as it was becoming quite a squeeze, even when built with Dewsbury giant dimensions in mind. Leaving Auntie C in charge and looking after the other aliens, I chose to sit in the back with Geraldine to talk things over. "How are you feeling?" she asked, concerned over how I was looking. "Worried," I said. "We are on our 8th planet already, and I'm beginning to notice a pattern. While the leaders seem to have got our message, the rest of the public don't always seem to have heard it. On some of the places we seem to be a total surprise to them, as if they don't know who we are. All those years of Belobrat corruption seem to have really put people off politics for good, which is so sad. Politics is in everything. Everyone should care about who gets elected and not feel so jaded and left behind. We failed them in our profession, and now it's really hurting us in our hour of need, when we politicians need everyone behind us. I can only hope everyone is more prepared when the day comes, and that their leaders haven't been keeping things from them as a nasty surprise." "Well," said Geraldine, generous as ever, "maybe the world leaders were waiting to meet us to check how serious the situation was. There's no point worrying their population if it's all a prank, or maybe they were hoping we'd have solved everything on our own." I sighed. "I hope you're right, Geraldine, and so far you tend to be. I just can't help worrying. You see, all my political life I've been told to hide bad news from people so they don't blame the messenger on the way to the polling booth. I've always felt, though, that the universe is every bit as intelligent, as experienced as me. A lot of it arguably more so. And everybody has the right to do what they think is right, based upon the fullest information we can give them. Lying to them, or keeping the truth from them, only makes things worse in the long term. Very few people I worked with ever seem to understand that, and still treat the people they represent as their pets, rather than their equals, as if they're voters, were algebras. It might not be as bad as that, Eleron, Geraldine said. After all, we don't need absolutely everyone to take part, just enough to scare the aliens. I hope so, I said. I'm just beginning to get a bad feeling about this. I could kid myself at the first few planets that JJ's messages had only just got through, but we're getting near the end of our quest now, with only 3 planets to go on the randometer. 2 of them are going to be hard sells, Helisphere especially. In my experience, Belobrat's only ever listened to other Belobrats. No, Eleron, said Geraldine. I don't have much faith in politicians anymore either after years of working under Doris. But I fully trust the electorate, or most of them anyway. They voted for you after all, didn't they? Oh, that's just it, I said sadly. Did they? Or was it just the IPO, wangling with figures? Never, said Geraldine. I have faith in you, Eleron, and I have faith in the universe for putting you in charge, just when we needed you most.
Universal entry, pause, AB54493649407. Mars Universal Systems Geek Code, President Eleron, acting. Headline, Mission to Hemisphere 1, retrieved from the Universal Record Office.
Where is the shuttle taking us now? Geraldine asked Jennifer, busy at the controls. She said. I groaned. I knew it. The Belobrats have always been the species most determined to go their own way and ignore the needs of the rest of the universe. I can't decide if they will ignore our plan or take it over and do it their way. But either way, I suspect this isn't going to be easy. To my great surprise, though, the Belobrats couldn't have been more helpful. As soon as our shuttle arrived in Helisphere's orbit, a bright red planet, where storm clouds perennially danced overhead, there was a giant sign welcoming us by name, saying hello, in fact. We followed their details of where to park and were met immediately by a huge crowd as far as even Mrasianart eyes could see. Everyone seemed to be cheering and taking selfies, being sure to get as close to us as they physically could. I was surprised to meet the Wallington Smiles I'd spoken to on Decreeta what felt like years earlier, but had only really been days, all pushing their way to the front.
I'm Eleron's best friend, do let me through. His wife invited me to Helisphere especially. I heard the broadcast first. I voted for you. Over here, woohoo! I'm your biggest fan, Eleron. Oh, how wonderful it is to be the true celebrity. Please say you'll agree to join the Big Belobrat Brother House for Series 789.
While all this was going on, a carnival float featuring mock-up versions of all of us rolled past, accompanied by a marching band, while ticker tape blew all the way around us from a nearby building. Suddenly everyone started chanting to the same piece of music.
Run, run, Eleron, support him now or the universe is gone. Win, win, Geraldine, don't wait for destruction to begin. Go, go, IPO, save the universe and put on a show. Yeah, yeah, we were there, we'll all be able to tell our grandkids how much we cared. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'm gorgeous. Oh, I sounded so good at that. Me too.
In front of them stood a calm, wizened figure, dressed in elegant robes, and a crown placed on each of his 3 heads.
Welcome,
He said,
my name is Balthazar. It is my humble duty to welcome you in our hour of need. You must all be very tired. You will find plenty of beverages organised by species waiting for you at our banqueting table, and after that we hope you will find full rest and supper before your return journey. Please eat and sleep before we discuss business.
Wow, there were so many of you, I said. There didn't seem to be many people paying attention on the other worlds, but here things seem to be different. I'm a bit overwhelmed. I thought people didn't care.
But of course, it's big news, the biggest for a century. We love big stories here on Helisphere, with all the gossip. And to think we're such a huge part of it,
said Balthazar, handing me a magazine. It read,
Hello Sphere, the Belobrat magazine that's out of this world. Price, astronomical. Breaking news, who are these mysterious aliens from the edge of space? And will this be our last edition? Sunday, September the 20th, 2281. Universe invaded by aliens. For 150 years now, the known universe has been coming to terms with the fact that there was life on 10 whole planets. Now, though, an alien spaceship has been spotted from an unknown universe, and for the first time we are facing the fact that there might be an 11th. Unlike the events of Endurance, though, these new aliens don't seem that friendly. In fact, our Earth reporter claimed that they were experiencing a good old-fashioned invasion before we were exterminated. So in today's paper we ask the important question: what does this mean for Belobrat?
Ruthless party to make a fuss and to turn a universal crisis into being about themselves,
laughed Auntie C in my ear. That's brilliant, I said, unable to contain my relief. That's exactly what we needed if we're to make this work. Balthazar nodded.
We Belobrats might not be the most noble or intelligent beings in the universe, but one thing we could do really well is make people pay attention when we think they need to. I passed your note on to our best journalists with a note that they were only to print this in the home edition. I wanted to wait for your approval before printing the Intergalactic edition. A quick picture too wouldn't go amiss.
No problem, I said, gathering up the aliens who were quickly becoming my crew and telling them what was going on. They quickly gathered together in what we considered was a suitably unposed pose.
Oh my goodness,
said Auntie C, knitting furiously until she had woolen hats big enough for all of us, complete with a simple reduction of the IPO logo on top of each of them, and handing them round.
I must look a fright. I've still got my curlies in. I wasn't expected to travel halfway around the universe when I left the Zigguratry, where I would have packed more beauty products. Oh my dear, let me hide in the back where people can't see me.
But Mariadne pushed the Clandestron back in front again.
What did it do?
She said, brushing her down before nodding.
You'll do.
A few seconds later, and we were all giving our approval over the photo hologram to our host, who quickly sent the picture off to their international paper, the Belobrat Bugle. How ironic that the very paper that had caused me sleepless nights ever since asking the unanswerable question of me on election night should turn out to be my saviour now. That was a great thing about a free press, though. They usually got to the bigger stories in the end, both the ones you were trying to hide and the ones you were trying to make people get behind. One of my prayers had now been answered, but I was still more than a little nervous. Do you think you can get this story out in time, though? We only have a couple of days left. And will enough people on other worlds read it?
Nothing simpler,
said Balthazar, and he pressed another button.
How much easier life has become with Mechion technology.
Quincy looked pleased, for to be praised by Belobrat was praise indeed.
And yes, our words have become quite a hit on all the other planets, except Mars, funnily enough. I do think we are the planet that knows best how to entertain people with gossip, after all, not to mention we're renowned for having the best columnists in the universe.
I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders, but it had been there so long, I wasn't quite ready to let it go. Will enough people take part, do you think? For my plan to work, we'll need millions, if not billions, or quadzillions. Enough shuttles to cover the sky, anyway. Balthazar smiled.
I can't vouch for the rest of the universe, but here on Hellsphere, everyone wants to play their part in helping Eleron. If this really is the end of the universe, then every Belobrat wants to tell their offspring that they did their part to help. That's the Belobrat way. And now I want to tell everyone I was there at the site of your famous speech, so if you would follow me.
I found it rather hard to get the attention of 1,000 or so Belobrats who had turned out to see me, as they all felt that their own conversations were far more important than anything I had to tell them. To be honest, I was bitterly sick of my speech by now, and almost sat down and agreed with them. But bit by bit, they seemed to respond to me, so I threw in extra sections off the top of my head that no one species had a right to be above any of us, or tell us what to do, never mind the Belobrats, how we owed it to our future offspring to protect as many people as possible now. And that as a Humrasianart, I sometimes felt like a Belobrat because I talked to myself all the time. And that responding to these aliens on behalf of the Earth was the only time my inward imaginary trilogy of heads, who always seemed to be arguing, had ever actually agreed with each other. The Belobrats weren't really one for applause. They tended to only clap themselves after they'd said something particularly good they wanted people to notice, or as I'd discovered with Bob, out of sarcasm. But Balthazar told me he couldn't have done a better job himself. something I thought I would never hear a Belobrat say to me. One last thing, I asked, not sure whether to press my host, given my previous experience of Belobrats hadn't exactly been that positive.
A planetary souvenir?
He asked.
Take this boxing glove. It used to be mine back in the days when I was young and stupid and kept hitting people to prove I was best, before I learned to use my brain.
Oh, I said nervously, it's lovely, but...
Oh, don't worry, Humrasianart,
said Balthazar.
I've attached it to a spring, so it's remote controlled. Very useful it was in the ring too. Oh, there's nothing in the rules about not using it, was there?
He winked.
I think I have some earth gluten somewhere too, that's useful as a gift. But come, you need to rest and recuperate before we talk about such things.
I wiped away another tear and found myself led towards the banqueting table, which was already inlaid, just as our host had said it would be. It also happened to be by the Belobrat variations of the Endurance and Insurgent Peace Fountain, made out of a strange squishy reflective surface, but I was told was a local metal exclusive to Helisphere, Belobratinum. On closer inspection, I was surprised to see that everyone from the history books had been given extra heads, and Bobby the Belobrat, a minor character from the first of these, was towering proudly over everyone in the middle.
A aesthetic choice to make them seem less alien,
Balthazar commented when he saw me looking at them.
Not what I'd have made, but there you are.
Gratefully we sat down looking for our places. Mine was in between Mariadne and Quincy. To my delight, I found a number of narwhal burgers toasted just the way I like them, and after so long coping with the food replicator versions of Decreeta, they tasted, well, out of this world. My neighbour's food looked good too, and even in the middle of the greatest mission of my life, my curiosity overtook me, and I found myself marvelling at their dishes. Is yours as good as mine? I asked Mariadne. She nodded. What is it? I asked.
Stew,
she said, emptying a bowl. Is it good? I asked.
Yeah, I do,
she said, licking her lips and sticking her head so far into a bowl, one of her antlers got stuck. I looked over at Quincy. Compared to the rest of us, he was sipping his meal very quietly. It looked suspiciously like nuts and bolts. Every so often he would season his food with a twist of the extra robotic arm he carried with him.
Do have some Eleron,
he said, seeing my interest. I tried a few bites, but it was all a bit chemically for my taste. Similarly, my neighbour was less than pleased with his taste of my narwhal burgers. Strange, I thought to myself, how diet is often the last tradition we keep that connects us to our place of birth. I looked over at everyone else. Geraldine seemed to be tucking into a meal of beans on toast. Jennifer was eating some type of vegetable with worms coated in licorice. Horace was stirring a pot noodle, and Cornelius was concocting some unusual dish out of various powders, while Auntie C was supping tea straight out of the teapot and crunching on some biscuits. Finally our food finished, and each of us full, we made our way to the beach huts that had been provided specially for us. Balthazar called me over as the others were entering.
Eleron,
he said.
I thought it might put your mind at rest to know that our contribution to your plan has been carved out of the best Belobrat gluten in the sand and is ready for you to expect whenever you wish to see it. I would also appreciate it greatly if you would allow me along in your mission so that I can play my small part in your plan alongside all the others.
Well, I said, shaking him by his many hands, you've certainly put my mind at rest, Balthazar. I'm so incredibly grateful for your help, and would love to have you along, if Helisphere can spare you.
Eleron,
he said, arms outstretched.
Spare me? What you're doing is for the survival of us all. Of course I can be spared. I am but a footnote next to your name.
I must have looked shocked as he put an arm on my shoulder and lowered his voice.
Probably not what you expect from the Belobrat, right?
Well, no, I said. Not the ones I've met.
Oh,
He said,
the arrogance of youth, I'm afraid. Talking of which, how is young Bob doing on Decreeta? Such an ambitious soul, full of so many ideas.
He was doing well when I left, though anything could be happening to him now. I didn't know him too well, and we weren't terribly close, if I'm honest.
I'm not surprised.
Balthazar continued.
He's like many a young Belobrat, I think. So tied up with his own feelings, and it takes longer for us to grow out of our primal needy stage than most beings, I think. It's having three heads, you know. It does tend to make one full of themselves. I still remember my youth and all those thoughts of self flying through my head as I tried to please all the parts of my personality. It does become much easier with the centuries, though, as you get more of a perspective on life somehow, and more at peace with your place in it. All your heads become more synchronised and experienceful, I find.
I'm very grateful to hear it, I said. Between you and me, I was dreading coming here, based purely from the Belobrats I've met. I can see that my own prejudices have carried over with me onto your planet too. I am sorry.
Don't,
said Balthazar.
Don't be. As I've grown older, I've come to realise that our ways aren't necessarily the only ones, or even the best. I've tried hard during my 500 years in office to get people to integrate. I set up the IPO to do exactly the job you're doing. I'm glad that someone like you is in charge. Just think what would have happened if these aliens had invaded any earlier, when we were in charge. It would have handed the Earth over, and then these aliens would have simply annexed us one by one. We need you, Eleron, or someone like you, that cares so deeply. You can count on me to fulfill your plan, whatever the cost.
Thank you so much, I said, struggling to hold back the tears. Our travels around the universe have shown me more warmth than I could ever have expected. It really is my vision of how I wanted the universe to be. Even here, where I thought I might end up with the biggest struggle, you have all shown me such kindness and made it so easy. Your support won't be forgotten.
The least we could do,
said Balthazar.
You're not alone, Eleron. It's a big universe out there, but we have your back. Wait, are you leaking?
Balthazar asked in alarm. No, I said, crying tears. It's just some dumb human thing.
What does it mean?
Oh, just that I'm emotional. I've been inside my head worrying for so long that I was on my own, or worse, risking the lives of those with me on a foolhardy mission.
Oh,
said Balthazar.
I've heard that humans with problems regulating emotions, but Mrasianarts tend to go inwards too deeply. As the world's only Humrasianart, no one has seen and felt what you have, Eleron, or been empathetic to so many people. But in the eyes of this Belobrat, that's not a fault. It's that big heart that makes you the perfect leader for our troubled times.
Thank you, I said, sniffling. I'd thought, I got so used to people in power thinking so very little of me.
You just need a bit more self-confidence, like most of the universe. Think like a Belobrat,
said Balthazar.
You've been through much, with lots still bearing down on your shoulders, but you have survived it to here.
Yes, I sighed. I've tried to be strong for so long, but now we are so close to finding out if my plan will work or not, and the implications are so great if it turns out it does not. Balthazar smiled.
I know all about self-doubt, believe it or not. Most Belobrats do, I think, secretly, deep down, but only discover what's happening to them in later life as they become more reflective. You are lucky to have such a human biological system that will allow you to find relief. Let your tears flow, Eleron. There is no need to be strong just now, and there is no one else to see. It will be our little secret.
Suddenly, then and there, after so many days of nervous tension, I find blessed relief and let my emotions take over me while this kindly Belobrat patted me on the shoulder with all three arms, while for once I behaved in an incredibly unpresidential way, howling like a newborn glad-hearted baby being sat on by a Dewsbury giant.
Universal entry, pause. AB 54493644429. Browse Universal Systems key code. Acting President Eleron. Mission to Helisphere 2. Retrieved from the Universal Record Office.
A few precious minutes later, I had left Balthazar, and appreciating his urge for me to rest, went to glance at my room. A trilogy of palatial round domes, lavishly decorated, with 3 pillows on the bed for each of my heads, and I happened to be a Belobrat. But I knew I wouldn't be staying. Instead, I felt it was my turn to call on Geraldine first, guessing that she wouldn't be able to sleep either. "Eleron," she asked anxiously as I knocked on her door. "Get in here, quick!" She was playing the Universal, or the Earth version of it at any rate. "Look at this," she said, and she played back some of the recordings humans had made of the aliens returning to Earth and playing havoc with the scenery. "Have you ever seen such a thing?" she said, as multiple views of the combination tower filled up the screen. "At last we're on a planet with a good universal service for visitors, so we can read up on how great Helisphere is, I suppose. I was trying to view what my family were up to in order to check they were all right, when I came across it. These aliens call themselves Agrosians, apparently, and the worst of it is, they're demanding you, Eleron." Geraldine stared up at me with tears in her eyes. "They say that they'll destroy every building on Earth unless the Earth hands you over to them. And then, of course, they can't. I look on in horror. But I thought their code of conduct meant they couldn't hurt anyone until they surrendered. At least, that's what we'd hoped. Geraldine looked on mournfully, unable to take her eyes off the screen. I guess I didn't extend to killing aliens indirectly, if they just happened to be in the buildings that were blown away into space. Look at all the devastation they've caused already. Even an army of Dewsbury giants working overtime wouldn't be able to put all that lot right, and these Agrosians did it without so much as a second glance. She shut the universal down and turned to me. I also looked up the delay on Decreeta and what's allowed before they have to start the foot side up again, and it looks as if we only have 2 days to go. What are we going to do, Eleron? Can we get everything done in that time? I looked at Geraldine's sad, mournful face, the only person who'd had total and utter faith in me up till then, and despite all my worries and doubts, I knew what I had to say. Yes, we can. We only have 2 planets to return to now, including Earth itself, as well as a return trip to Dusius. So far, most of the planets seem to be behind our plan, and certainly all the leaders have been. None of them have quite come out and called my idea stupid anyway, which is what I'd always feared. We always knew we weren't going to defeat these aliens with firepower. We just have to hope that defeating them with numbers will work better. It was my turn to comfort my new friend. Get some sleep, I said. We're nearly there. There's still hope all this will be put right. I hoped I sounded more confident than I felt. In the morning, Balthazar was waiting impatiently. He had packed rather a lot of belongings in anticipation of going away with us, and a huge crowd had gathered to see him leave. Rather sweetly, he told me that I hoped I knew that they were really here for me too. I doubt that, I said. Some politician I am. My colleagues at the IPO hated me.
That's not true,
Balthazar said.
Bob. He was my protégé, and only good words to say about you.
I laughed. Let me guess what those words were. Idealistic, impractical, and easily manipulated.
Trustworthy, loyal, and hard-working were 3 of them, I remember. You confide things in me via the Universal. He never told anyone else, Eleron, and his last words to me were that you'd lasted longer in the job than he'd expected, and uncovered more, things than he was anticipating. He admired you, Eleron. You were just in his way of running the IPO the way he wanted it to be run, which was keeping him rich. But it was nothing personal. He still admired you. Even though it was the sort of admiration you have for a rival, he was very different to you. After all, you did beat him hands down in the election.
I did. I was shocked, but he told me he'd changed the results to make sure I got in.
Of course,
said Balthazar.
That was the easiest way to make you lose faith in yourself, and you were in his way. He was always going to tell you that. Why else do you think he had it in for you? He was jealous of your profundity and your ability to talk to other people and unite them, rather than just talk about yourself and alienate them, the way he did. His flattery didn't work on you, though it seemed to work on Airglow, so he didn't know what to do with you. Now you can do that with your colleagues, but you can't do that to a whole universe. It's too big. There will always be someone to find out the truth, no matter how hard you bury it. At first he thought you were just better at making up lies than him, and that hurt his ego. But with time, you realised that you meant what you said, but maybe your vision of the universe was genuinely more popular than his.
Then why did he stop me, I asked. Why didn't he help me? I would have made things better for Helisphere too in time. Balthazar sighed.
I don't think he was interested in Helisphere, just himself. You discovering the corruption the IPO had been up to all that time didn't put him in the best of lights, given that he'd been such a part of it. He would have kicked him out in disgrace, or so he thought, so I think he figured he had to kick you out first. A good job too for the universe that he did as it happened, whatever Bob is going through right now.
But why did he do it? I was in despair. I couldn't believe how different my life would have been if we worked together as a team and left our egos behind on our respective planets.
Because he was like every other bully,
said Balthazar.
He was scared he got things wrong. He was taking it out on the one who got things right. With one head to his 3, he thought he could mess with yours. So he did.
I laughed, remembering the insults he had given me and how he had looked down on me so many times, literally given our very different heights. Scared? Of little me?
Of course. You didn't seem so little on the Universal when you spoke of your big visions for the universe, and you were everything he wasn't. Incorruptible, hard-working, and brilliant. But most of all, he couldn't stand that you were that brilliant and still so modest with it. That's what all bullies are scared of in the end. People who are more brilliant than they are, but who have less belief in their own ability, because it makes them less sure of their own.
I sighed. Couldn't you have talked to him? To have told him what you've told me? It could have saved so many problems.
No,
said Balthazar.
for you see, when he was young, I was the one who bullied him.
For a non-human, Balthazar came as close to crying as he physically could. Why? I asked, shocked. Balthazar seemed such a nice old Belobrat who was free, wise and heads.
Because, as an older Belobrat politician, I was scared of him in turn. He was going to do so much and overshadow everything I built up, so I was always going to give him a hard time for it. That's the Belobrat way.
See, said Geraldine, who had been listening into our conversation, and was again kindly changing the subject. What did I tell you, Eleron? Just because those who shout loudest didn't vote for you, doesn't mean that nobody voted for you. And there are an awful lot of people out there in the universe to vote.
You're a hero,
said Balthazar.
So be heroic.
But I don't feel at all heroic, I gulped.
Then pretend,
smiled Balthazar.
That's the Belobrat way.
Maybe, I shuddered. But it's not the Mrasianbrat way. I can't lie to all those people counting on me. You don't have to lie exactly, said Geraldine. You just have to believe that your vision of the universe is the right one. And it really was, you know. We're better together. We have to believe that. And if we can't live up to that, we might as well be wiped out. Because if these Agrosians won't do it, then someone will just come along and do the job one day. We have to be better than that. And you're the person who reminded us of that. So keep doing it, Eleron. Keep reminding people we don't have to be scattered and scared of each other, but we can come together and help each other. Remind the universe that we don't have to be at war, that peace is a choice we can have, but only if we work towards it and everyone plays their part. I didn't quite know what to say to that, and our conversation drifted away into silence. Finally our goodbyes had been made. The shuttle was on its way again. And as it lifted off from the ground, I could feel a lot of my doubts and worries leaving me with it. After all, there are only 2 planets left to go now. We might actually do this. Bob had been listening to what Aglo had been telling the IPO about her plan, even though it was getting more and more fractious, and he communicated with them less and less, to the point where no one else thought he was even listening. Part of it was fright, part of it was discovering that an even meaner, nastier race of the Belobrats existed in the universe, and part of it was down to his cake addiction. Bob had been left without his staple diet for nearly a week now, and was beginning to crack without it. Mostly, though, it was guilt. This was all his fault, he thought, as much as he'd been trying to keep it from himself. He could see that now. The corruption that meant that the IPO no longer had an army. Getting rid of Eleron, who was tougher and harder working and less corruptible than that useless Habredat had proved to be. Bob thought shamefacedly that he'd even given away some of the IPO's secrets to these beings without meaning to, against all of his training. Bob knew that he cared too much about his own survival, and would be unable to stand up to more interrogation about wretched Queen ever came back again, and was terrified of what he might give away next, and how history might remember his legacy as a result. Legacy meant so very much to a Belobrat after all. Well, no more. After several days of trying to make his mind up, all 3 of his heads were finally in agreement with each other. It couldn't go on like this. He had to put an end to things, one way or another. He didn't quite understand why Aglo needed the distraction, but he knew somehow that if he tried something now and pulled it off, then maybe history would still think of him fondly, maybe even think of him as a hero. Bob cared so much what everyone else thought of him, it hurt sometimes, gnawing away at him like a half-starved Archibald. His greatest fear was being forgotten, of having all his brilliance extinguished and his life count for nothing, or worse, of being despised. Well, the universe would soon remember him now, hopefully kindly. Bob wobbled to his feet. He thought that maybe he could take a few of these aliens down with him, or at least find out what their weaknesses were. Maybe the rest of the IPO would join in and take out the others. Or not. Suddenly it didn't seem to matter anymore. At least he would be a hero. A real shame he never got to live out his days of retirement on a nice, peaceful and colonised planet after all the hard work he'd gone to, siphoning off money for his pension plan. But maybe that money would go towards a statue of him one day, when all his sins had been forgotten, to go alongside the Endurance and Insurgent ones back home on Helisphere. Suddenly making his mind up, Bob charged ahead at full pace, taking one of the Agrosians by surprise, while all three of his mouths screamed with rage. Unseen, Airglow seized the chance and shuffled away cautiously to the food replicating machines.
Gosh!
The nearest alien to Bob said as he found himself falling to the floor. Bob lunged at him, after mentally tearing at him, before the other 4 aliens fired their weapons at him, and the Belobrat felt himself instantly evaporating into a pile of dust. Oh well, he thought. I bet I'm the biggest pile of dust these tiny aliens have ever seen. And he died with a smile on his face as the IPO rushed towards him.
Bob!
Cried Horace. Squeaked Jane at the hive. Said her.
He was trying to save us all, said Lawrence. What a hero. He'll never be forgotten.
His name will live on.
Said Odabego.
He was always a troubled soul. I hope he's at rest now, in peace.
A like sighed.
Wasn't the logical way to die, but I admire his courage all the same.
Oh, I don't know.
Said Horace, moved.
If we're all going to die anyway, then maybe it was better to go this way. You could tell the time here was getting to him. Patience was never one of Bob's strengths.
Enough. Back!
Ordered Squash.
If anyone else tries anything similar, they will meet the same fate. You can't win. It will be absolutely smashing to see you try. What? Ha ha!
Said Bosch too. The IPO sadly walked to their corner of the room, feeling more defeated than ever, and in their grief only vaguely noticed that Airglow had somehow edged away to the kitchen.
Universal entry, ALLS, AB 544-936-49453. Browsing Universal Systems key code, acting, President Eleron. Headline, mission to Earth, slight return. 1. Retrieved from the Universal Records Office.
I was feeling much better by the time we were back in the shuttle. I had a great team behind me. We had a plan that seemed so far to be working, and soon I would be back in the wings of my wonderful wife, all our past forgiven and forgotten. Right, gang, I said, the randometer has chosen Earth again, and do you know, for once I have a good feeling about this visit. This planet is the only one to have seen these actual aliens after all, so the threat will seem that much more real to them than it has to everyone else. They will be falling over themselves for our help, and it wouldn't surprise me if there are crowds waiting for us and a sea of shuttles all ready to take off the minute we give the word. I know this planet always gets a bad name, but, well, I've known 2 humans really well now, and they're amongst the noblest, most courageous people I could ever hope to meet. I smiled at Geraldine, and when she met my smile with one of her own, I felt my legs go a bit funny. That's odd, I thought, but with other matters suddenly so pressing, I fell the thought away for later.
Mummy, it's still be there?
Asked Jennifer anxiously. I doubt it, I said. If they wanted to hang around Earth, they could have just stayed there, instead of going to Decreeta. And if they are there, then we know to recognise their shuttle now, and can leave again. Plus we have the advantage that they still won't recognise ours. As we got closer to the muddy brown blue-green planet, I noticed the same golden diamond-encrusted rockets up in the sky. I've been wondering how the humans would be able to keep up with us, as the only planet not to have Mechion shuttleware of their own. However, these look like surprisingly advanced rockets, I said to the Mechion, not too far behind your technology. To my surprise, Quincy smiled.
We might even do better in many ways. You take all that awful gold stuff off. After all, they must be incredibly powerful to orbit in space like that, or carrying so much weight. I just don't understand why anyone would do that. To use up so much extra thrust for something as unnecessary as staying in a stationary orbit, just as an advertisement. What are billionaires even doing in space? It's so illogical.
Geraldine laughed, and I raised an eyebrow. Good luck with that, she snorted. Why, I said. I mean, I know they belong to millionaires and all, but they won't mind loaning them to help save their own planet, would they? I mean, if things go according to plan, they just get the shuttles back later. And if not, well, they'd probably be past caring about their money where they're enslaved or murdered. They don't care about the rest of the planet or universe, she said, just their bank balance. If things went wrong, they'd probably spend the next few days really as far away from any planet as possible. And why stay orbiting Earth at all, I asked. Why not go and join another planet and be rich there? Because they wouldn't be rich there. They have to stay around Earth to have people work for them, but not, actually be on Earth for tax purposes. I don't understand, I said, not understanding. Geraldine sighed. Back in the olden days, pre-Endurance, we used to have an old Earth expression of being offshore. It meant that if you made your money in one country, you could move it and so got to keep it and didn't have to pay tax through clever bank accounting. Well, the latest variation of that is being off-orbit. That way you don't have to pay tax to any country. You get to keep it all for yourself. However, these people like to stay just as close to the Earth's orbit as they could legally get away with. Just to gloat.
I invented not to say more than I've enlisted,
said Cornelius in shock. Geraldine nodded. Nowadays, every time inflation rockets up, they go off-planet just to make sure we don't have to pay any tax. They keep all their finances up into space, just in case. But that's monstrous, I say. On Mars, tax is a noble thing. We share all that we have with each other, and nobody gets so rich while others are left so poor. Well, sighed Geraldine, that's the Earth way, I'm afraid. It's always been like that, and I assumed it always would be, till you came along. She smiled at me shyly. She smiled at me shyly. She smiled at me shyly. Did you mean what you said in one of your speeches? That you wouldn't leave anyone behind, however forgotten they were by their own planetary leaders? When I first heard that, it seemed so alien to us on Earth. Of course, I said, puffing myself up. Why, I have plans for how to reclaim money from all of those tax dodgers around the universe and redistribute it. It's not as if I'm going to leave them with nothing either. There'd just be a wider share of the wealth so that everyone would have something, and those who worked extra hard got a bit extra.
But aren't taxes how your planets pay for services? What about everybody else? The people there can't stand that, surely?
Quincy asked.
Yes, sounded Auntie C. I know you always tend to intergalactically think of the Earth as our most backwards planet, but surely even there people must see that making the people with the most money pay the least amount of tax, and those with the least pay the most amount of tax, is the very height of stupidity. Why, if one of the classes of Ziggurat free were the same demands, we would have kicked them out of their cave so far we wouldn't have a tax form to stand on. It's monstrous is what it is, and so alien.
Squeaked Jennifer.
I remember the days when we still had to pay the Belobrat protection money.
Geraldine shrugged her shoulders. Not everyone treats the universe as fairly and kindly as you, Eleron. I saw an old Clandesprod map of the universe once. Where the Earth should have been, we just said, here be monsters. Sometimes I think they're right. Well, I said, I'm commandeering both of those rockets for our cause. Presidential orders, whether the Earth is a part of the IPO or not. There was no one on Earth to meet us. With Doris captured, Geraldine on our team, and most of the politicians refusing to come back off holiday, there was a power vacuum on Earth that nobody quite knew how to fill. What remained of the opposition party had offered to make a coalition with what remained of the ruling party, but that had ended in disaster on hour 3 when they argued over what biscuits to have in the meetings. Someone tried to raise an emergency war cabinet made up of past leaders, but they just squabbled over the priority they'd be given on a celebration statue that was sure to be commissioned later. The press were too busy blaming the military. The military were too busy blaming the press. The politicians were too busy blaming the military and the press. The public were blaming everyone, but were mostly hiding from the politicians that spent this time of greatest danger locking up people who dared to criticise them. With so much unnecessary drama and fallout going around, nobody had paid one single thought to the bigger picture. We searched in vain for a good place to land, the nearest safe space close to Downing Street, littered with abandoned vehicles and what was apparently a mini riot in progress, full of noise and fire and fuel and fear. With nowhere else to park, and not wanting to destroy more historical monuments if she could help it, Geraldine urged Jennifer to fly around until we found somewhere. It was me who noticed a large building looming on our right and asked her to swerve there. Well, I said, surely whoever lives here won't mind us landing if it's for the good of the people. After all, they're still on the planet, so they must be the good guys. I bet they pay lots of tax. Geraldine looked uneasy. Well, not exactly. They're royals, the ex-heads of state, so they're exempt from paying anything. But I thought Doris was a head of state, I said. Not exactly, said Geraldine. Well, sort of. It's complicated. You know how our royal family were deposed as part of a great war of the 21st century? I nodded. They only agreed to step down on the condition that they kept their palace and stayed on all the stamps and coins. Well, technically they still rule over us, though in practice they don't.
You mean they're unelected?
Asked Quincy.
By what right do they govern then?
They're meant to be appointed by God and rule through a direct bloodline. Only the bloodline went wild many centuries ago and they're more closely linked to another country than the one they're meant to be ruling anyway.
How illogical.
Sniffed Quincy.
What a backward species.
Squeaked Jennifer, feeling the tug of gravity pulling the ship out of its path. To my amazement, while most of the aliens who could were hiding under their seat, Jennifer stayed at the controls, steering us into the safest crash landing she could manage, right on top of the roof. But we rolled a couple of times, and the building we were on heaved greatly under our weight. To my relief, we came to a standstill, upright.
Phew,
Said Mariadne, breaking the silence. Is everyone all right? Oh, Jennifer, you were amazing, I said, noticing that the Glabterhardet had turned a funny shade of green. She asked.
a rope ladder.
Said Horatio. Yes, I replied, that's exactly what we need. Shame there isn't one here with us. To my surprise, Quincy got a parcel out of his dimensionally transcendent pocket.
Freeze dried.
He said.
Has anyone got any hydrogen on them? I'm out of money.
Would rainwater do? It's a hydrogen-oxygen compound, said Geraldine. The stuff that keeps falling from the sky, she added, seeing her companion's confusion. So the Mechion held the parcel out the shuttle door, and to our great surprise, kept unravelling rung by rung. First time I've been glad to see the rain, smiled Geraldine. How long will it reach? I asked.
As long as the hydrogen keeps falling, it will keep growing bigger.
Quincy said.
Let me test it.
And so doing, he crawled on his front to the edge of the roof and unravelled the ladder as far as it would go.
Oh, my dear,
Said Auntie C, knitting a ladder of her own.
I'm not sure I can go down there. The way down being so very, very great, and my boat being so very, very large. I'm a lot older than the rest of you whippersnappers, and I'm liable to do myself a mischief, something awful. I will. I totally will. Oh dear. Maybe it is for the best if some of us stay behind and make repairs on the shuttle, so that it is ready to take off again in a hurry, because you never know what might happen on this alien planet. It's an alien planet. It is so rough and warm. All of you rough and warm.
We are in agreement, madam.
Nodded Balthazar, looking down the ladder and turning a bit green.
It would not do for an elderly Belobrat to be seen at such a compromising angle either, especially on a planet so new to us. I would hate to give such a bad first impression.
Jennifer squeaked her accord too, her head already under the shuttle bonnet, so she didn't have to look at the ground below, while Quincy had stopped paying attention to us, retrieving an electronic toolkit out of his never-ending pockets and pressing lots of buttons. Well, I said to Geraldine, Horatio, Mariadne and Cornelius, it looks as if we have our shuttle party. Follow me, everyone. Feeling a lot braver than I felt, I led the way down the ladder, pausing only to marvel at all the windows I passed on the way down. This planet must really worship their sun, I said to Geraldine behind me, and no wonder if that hydrogen-oxygen stuff kept falling from the sky. I was getting wet. She commented, let me tell you about the window tax sometime. What's a window tax? It's an archaic tax on windows. You were considered better off the more windows you had back in the Earth's olden days, so you were taxed for them. The family who lived here were just showing off they didn't have to pay tax for it.
You mean tax sunlight? Auntie C gaped from above. The most natural resource in the universe, without even turning it into energy the way Clandestons did. You humans are weird.
All I heard above me was a heavy sigh. You're telling me Earth feels like the most alien of all planets sometimes, to me, even though I live there. You're telling me Earth feels like the most aliens of all planets sometimes to me, even though I live there. In the distance, I could see some Earth guards wearing big fluffy hats on their heads, not unlike giant Glabterhardets. They looked official. Surely they would be able to help us. All right, I said to Geraldine, as we both helped Mariadne, who had got her antlers tied up on the ladder. I think you better do the talking, and we better stay behind you so as not to scare anyone." My companion thought this was a good plan, and walked up to the two men. "Hi," said Geraldine to the Beefeaters. "We're the IPO rescue team on an urgent mission. Take me to your leader, or at least the one that isn't me." However, nobody seemed surprised to see us. The Beefeaters shrugged at us in an annoyingly Habradar way.
"There isn't one. Not since the aliens took Doris. Just look at this devastation."
And he held out a newspaper with more shots of the destruction that had been caused by the marauding aliens. It was the first time the others had seen evidence of what these aliens could do, and they were visibly upset. These aliens not only could do anything, they had already done it. Even though we had all been working to that assumption already, the evidence that we were up against an alien race more advanced than our own sent shockwaves through my band of politicians, all of us unable to take our eyes off the holographic screen. Geraldine was crying at seeing what they'd done to her home world close up, and I nearly joined her. "That's devastating," Geraldine said, visibly moved. "Were there people inside at the time?"
"Luckily no," said the Beefeater. "At least we don't think so. We're outside office hours, and most tourist attractions closed when the news about our beloved Supreme Leader being captured came out. We didn't know about you lot. People have been moaning on and off about where the IPO had got to."
"But we have voted to stay out of the IPO," I start, flustered, before realising it's the wrong war to be fighting right now. "Well, we're here now," I finished lamely. "I take it the Earth contribution to our project isn't ready." The Beefeater shrugged again. Strangely, it was even more irritating in this species than it was with the Habradar.
"We're not going to get out of this alive, are we?"
said Horatio sadly.
"Quincy would say to us that logically we can't compete against a technology that can do things like that. I only hope the end will be quick and painless when it comes, though logically that too seems unlikely right now."
"I second your points as reasonable and valid, all materials and viewpoints considered," nodded Cornelius.
"Oh, Jews!"
said Mrasianbrat, blowing a nose in sympathy. "We're not done yet," said Geraldine, "and this doesn't change anything. Remember the plan." In a quieter voice she came over to me and asked, "What now? There's no president to go and visit on this planet. It didn't look as if most of the locals were pleased to see us." "I've been thinking about that," I said. "I've heard a lot about the Earth Press and how they're some of the most read papers intergalactically. Could we go to them, do you think, and ask for help?" "We can try," said Geraldine, not entirely convinced. "Fleet Street's this way, Eleron. That would be the best place to go."
Universal entry, pause, AB54493649486. Browse Universal Systems key code, active, President Eleron. Headline, mission to Earth, Cycle 10, doom. Retrieved from Universal Records, office.
"No," I said, our group having followed Geraldine's directions and walked all the way to the main newspaper office, where they were threatening to call the guards on us. "We're not here to murder you. We're not the invading aliens. We're the friendly aliens. You know, the ones that the Earth has known about for 150 years or so now. So no, you can't have an exclusive about why we're here to kill you. We're the nice aliens, your neighbours in space. Surely you recognise us by species, if not by person. I'm President Eleron of the IPO. Do you really not know who I am?" The reporter shrugged. How that action was beginning to get on my nerves. "Look at me," I said. "I'm half human. On my mother's side. You must have noticed the invading aliens weren't the least bit humanoid." "Here," said Geraldine in desperation, passing over a very crumpled newspaper she had clearly been carrying with her for some time. "Maybe this will prove it to you." She handed the paper over to the reporter, and I noticed a large colour picture of me and Airglow in the centre, and a date from the morning I landed on Earth. "There you are, you see," I said to the reporter. "If you want ID, then here I am." "Wait, what's all this?" Quickly I grabbed it back and turned to the front page, and to my horror saw that Airglow had given another interview, apparently after I left Decreeta. The reporters had completely distorted the story so that it was all about our love life and not about the alien invasion at all, which rather made sense of the lack of urgency on this planet compared to all the others we'd visited, even though Earth was the only one to have actually seen these aliens. That wasn't what hit me most, though. It was the headline, just as I was beginning to forget everything that had happened between us. Just as I was beginning to forget everything that had happened between us.
"I never believed in my husband. His election is all a huge mistake."
Whoa, weekly fail. Intergalactic First Lady destroys President Eleron with blistering interview exclusive to Earth.
Inside, all the best intergalactic gossip, yours for £809.10. First Lady Aglo is no stranger to controversy. Since her husband's time in office on new planet Decreeta a week ago, she has revealed to us a whopping amount of taxpayers' money has gone missing. Now she provides the shocking claim that the wrong president won, and that she always thought her husband hopeless. In an even more damning twist in Eleron's failed presidency of the past week, Aglo tells us that she never voted for her husband, picking him a
Most unsuitable candidate I never believed in.
I'm plump for
handsome and charming, or Belobrat instead. Though I'm better than all the rest of the IPO put together.
she added, saying,
I should have put myself forward instead of that bunch of alien reprobates.
continued, pages 2 to 978. On other pages, an artist's impression of invading aliens, they're blue and cute and spotty, what Princess Di would look like if she was still alive and came from Camelosia. And we ask what the impending alien invasion will do to house prices. But, this is awful, I spluttered. How could they possibly print such tittle-tattle when they know the fate of the universe is at stake? Why don't they understand how important this is? And why can't my wife keep a great big mouth shut?
Fake news!
Nodded Mrasianbrat, peering over my shoulder. I'm sorry, Eleron, said Geraldine. She never believed in me, I said, having delayed my biggest emotion behind all the rage. She never thought I was good enough to be president. She never even voted for me, but Bob. Well, that's it then. It's all over. There's no way the 10 planets will back us now they know I'm a fraud. The war between the two of us have cost us universal peace. These aliens have won. Geraldine patted me on the shoulder. Oh, whoever reads this dratted rag? Not many people, even on my planet. They're known for sensationalist news, which is probably why they seem to be the only intergalactic publication to take Aglo's story in the first place. I did think about telling you when you were talking about her earlier, she said, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Honestly, it doesn't make a difference what Aglo thinks, you know. But I only did this for her, I sighed. I wanted her to be proud of me. There was a time when she was the only person in the universe who believed in me. How can I go on if the very foundations of my career were a lie? No, Eleron, Geraldine said. Everything you achieved, you did yourself, regardless of whether she believed in you or not. But don't you see, I said helplessly and hopelessly, her believing in me was the only reason I believed in me. My colleagues at the IPO didn't believe in me either. Nobody does. Only you, and I've inspired you under false pretences. I'm the wrong person for the job. I'm just going to let all of you down. I put my head in my wings and sobbed. I can't do this, I said to myself, realising that the Universal was still transmitting my thoughts to the Universal in book form, and being unable to stop the thoughts that had been building up inside me for so long now. So I spoke to the universe directly, with a different message this time. Well, what do I care? I always wanted transparency in politics. It's about time you should all know. You're a great leader, but you've all put so much faith in. Doesn't feel up to the job. Even for a human I don't feel strong enough, and even for a Mrasianart I don't feel wise enough to lead. The truth is, combining both species hasn't given me superpowers beyond my telepathy that's now defunct. It's just given me a double dose of neurosis, not to mention anxiety, panic attacks, and an ability to imagine the worst. I know I was hired to lead you all, but to be honest, the only thing I think I might have been doing is leading you all astray. Horace and Bob were right, weren't they? I'm nothing, just someone with a famous family who've been living off that for his whole career. I was never meant to lead or inspire, and my vision for the future was completely impractical. There, I've said it. No going back now. I know you all want me to save the universe, but the truth is, I'm nothing. I fear I'm going to let you all down. Very badly. Then I looked up at my brave companions and asked, what is going to happen to us? Nothing. I believed in you, Eleron, said Geraldine. I always did. Yeah, I laughed sourly. I bet you wish you hadn't now. I've led you round the universe 8 times for a stupid plan that's never going to work, asking you all to risk your lives trying to rescue people who are only too glad to see the back of me. I have no right to be leading any of you. You are all worth a quadrillion of me. What is it they say on Earth? Never meet your heroes in case they turn out to be human. Well, I guess the same turns out to be true for Humrasianarts too. I understand. If you want to abandon the plan and just run away, it would be safer. No, said Geraldine, straight-faced. If anything, I believe in you more. I'm so used to politicians on the make for themselves and playing against other people with things we don't really mean, but you're the opposite. You even help the people who are fighting against you. When you talk about helping us, it's genuine when it comes from you, in a way it isn't from anybody else. I never quite allowed myself to believe one actually cared for me, especially from another planet. I mean, no politician on my own planet ever seemed to care for me much. That alone makes you a hero, Eleron, whatever you think of yourself.
Eleron,
said Horatio.
I believe in you too. Always did.
You are indisputably the overriding certainty when all due social variables and favourability biases were duly disengaged, said Cornelius.
Me too. We all do,
said Mrasianbrat earnestly. Then why, I asked, peering out from behind my wings, why would the IPO say otherwise? Why would my wife say it, for crying out loud? She of all people is meant to have my back. She's not meant to be stabbing me in it.
Because you didn't represent the IPO establishment,
said Horatio.
If you help everyone a little bit, that means you won't help a special few a lot, and not scare them.
As for Aglo, said Geraldine, wording things as carefully as she could, you obviously know her better than we do, but have you ever thought that just maybe she attached herself to you because you were brilliant and were always going to get ahead, and she knew it and wanted to share in it? No, I said sadly. She was the charismatic one. She radiated brilliance like no one else I ever met. People voted for her, not me. Of course she was going to hate me eventually. Everybody does. Eleron, said Geraldine, staring at me. I voted for you. Most of the people I know did too. We never knew Aglo. She may have been fun to be with, but she didn't have your depth of vision, and she wasn't voted to be Intergalactic President. You were. If she was really that brilliant, then she would have stood for the position herself. I was clearly still in shock, so she put her arm around my wing. I know Mrasianarts take a long time to process anything. You've had a lot to deal with, but please, Eleron, file it away in the back of your mind for later. For now we need you to snap out of it and tell us what to do. We're hopeless without you. For if you don't lead us, then nothing that ever happened any time, anywhere is going to matter much anymore. I knew she was right, and could see the three expectant faces staring up at me, expecting me to do or say something constructive and presidential. I couldn't let them down, but equally I couldn't function in that moment. It wasn't just the weight of responsibility or even the betrayal that got to me the most, but the thought that life wasn't what I had always thought it had been, that I had built my construction of myself on sands that had shifted helplessly beneath my cricket legs. Now I was being expected to navigate through uncharted waters and keep everyone safe, and I didn't even know the part of the map I had started out from anymore. I was well and truly lost, swallowed up by not just grief, but confusion that paralysed me. I don't know what to do, I said eventually, and rather hopelessly, as I met everyone's gaze as unflinchingly as I could. There was a long pause. Third rule of diplomacy, I said. Never reveal to alien strangers when your heart is breaking. But that's a stupid rule, even with one for every day and one for best. I think both of mine just broke. I looked up. Sorry, everyone. I think I've just let you down. Oh, no, you don't, said Geraldine with feeling. Your big heart might be what got you into that mess of yours, but it's also what's going to get us out of this one. Fourth rule of diplomacy. Always do something, even if things feel hopeless. There might just be a way out. I didn't know about a fourth rule, I began. Fifth rule of diplomacy, said Geraldine. Never reveal if you've just made up a rule of diplomacy on the spur of the moment. Now, first things first. Let's finish our job here, request the human part of the statue, then regroup so that we're all together again and we can work out what to do next. The reporter coughed. Are you going to be much longer? He said. I need to put out a new copy. The universe is ending, you know. I'm going to move on with the final edition.
Universal entry, pause, AB 54493649578. Rams Universal Systems key code, acting, President Eleron, retrieved from the Universal Record of English.
I surveyed the proofs of the new edition with, no, not pride, but relief, at least, that the reporter had got the salient alien points across. I was still smarting from some of the remarks said about me in the old edition of the paper I'd come across, though. I don't seem diminutive to you, do I? I asked the others. They looked at each other uncertainly.
I don't think too,
said Mrasianbrat, shrugging.
You all do.
Logic dictates that last is no recourse for one's impact on one's surroundings,
said Cornelius. Exactly what I was going to say, said Geraldine. Size isn't everything. Now show us what the new edition looks like, Eleron.
Rock, Scissors, Paper Universe, Final Edition, due to the end of the universe. No, Intergalactic President Eleron doesn't have rocks in his head, although his odd request might sound that way at first. His ingenious plan relies on as many citizens in the universe as possible, taking to the skies and flying to Decreeta in a heroic mercy mission. In addition, Eleron's plan involves a sculpted hairpiece measuring 10 feet high. Any earth stone will do just fine, says the diminutive president, who, only yesterday, was being castigated by his wife and his very pages for being hopeless. The very fate of the universe depends on it, Eleron said. I'm afraid I can't reveal my plans just yet, but you will all know about them soon. Page 5, illegal alien, turns out to be alien. Page 7, Camelosian representative shows off her curves in historic legal debate. Page 19, I didn't know Belobrat rhyme was intoxicating, says man in hit and run incident. Page 77, regional stars inside, and if you disagree, then win a trip to space to tell them why they were wrong.
Well, this report is about as accurate as we're going to get, I suppose, said Geraldine. Come on, let's go back and see how the others are getting on at our shuttle. Hold on a minute, I said, and asked the reporters. Does anyone have a ladder we could borrow? Oh, and a big garden rake, Geraldine asked, to my obvious surprise. It's for our battle souvenir, she explained to me. Those aliens won't know what hit them. After our long trips back to Buckingham Palace, Jennifer, Quincy, Balthazar and Auntie C greeted us with bad news. It looked as if we were going to be forced to spend another night here. Well, said Geraldine, I'm the governmental secretary and I know where we could sleep. Officially, of course, I'm not allowed to do this, but I guess under the circumstances, nobody can object really. The Agrosian shuttle had travelled on to Mars, and Queen Calixta was making much the same speech she'd made to the Earthlings, which she would show them what the Agrosians were capable of, and if Eleron didn't sign Mars over to her forthwith in a matter of days, she would be entitled under the Agrosian code to start taking lives. She paused before hitting the building destruction button though. This civilization wasn't acting in the way she expected. On Earth, as on most planets her ancestors had conquered, there had been blind panic, desperation, and unbridled, purified fear. Here, though, the strange-looking natives all came out of their houses and either stared up silently at the sky, or simply, quietly, pressed their foreheads together in deep meditative thought. That's odd, Queen Calixta thought. News of events on Earth and Decreeta would surely have travelled across the universe by now if those IPO creatures had been telling even a minute part of the truth about the interconnectedness of this side of the universe. Oh well, she would soon make them quake in fear with what she could do. Her finger hovered over the destruction button with less certainty than before. But pressed it still was, and all the biggest buildings on Mars rose up into the air, much as they had on Earth, spiralling until they all fell in one great heap. Crushing the town square park with its fountain and statues, the humans, Mrasianarts and Clandesprods all jumbling up together. Somehow, though, the destruction wasn't quite what Queen Calixta expected either. As with Agrosia and all its colonies, the Earth had contained several large buildings and they'd all made a satisfying noise when Earth metal was placed on top of Earth metal. Here, though, the buildings were organic and were comparatively small. Even the biggest buildings only seemed to consist of 3 or 4 stories, and they were few and far between. This wasn't a planet built for size or spectacle at all, and so much less satisfying to destroy. On getting her cameras to zoom into the planet, Queen Calixta could see panic and fear in the eyes of the Mrasianarts right enough, but even then it was matched with stoicism and determination. Oh, this wouldn't do at all. These people should have been scared out of their wits and doing everything in their power to pass the president over to her. So Queen Calixta made the same speech she had made before, promising more chaos and destruction if either President Eleron failed to hand over Mars, or Mars failed to hand over President Eleron, or if both failed to hand over this poet Chuck Berry. Furthermore, she ordered Eleron to return to Decreeta, where she would await the handover of all the 10 planets to her. Queen Calixta paused after making this speech, grinning to herself smugly as she prepared to listen to the cries of mercy and forgiveness. To her shock, though, the only thing she could hear was a chant of, "Eleron, have faith! Eleron will save us! Eleron, you wouldn't abandon us! Eleron, have faith!" Well, whoever this Eleron was must be a warrior indeed, given the amount of people he seemed to have inspired. All the better then, Queen Calixta supposed, when she had destroyed him and returned his corpse to his people. They wouldn't be treating her with such defiance there, no, no. pleased with her day's work, and trying to ignore a slight sense of uneasiness rising at the back of her mind in the place where mistakes and misjudgments were made, Queen Calixta ordered her shuttle to be returned to Decreeta.
Universal entry, pause, AB 54493649590. Raj Universal Systems key code, acting, President Eleron. Headline, mission to Earth, slight return, 4. Retrieved from Universal Records of Image.
The ambassadorial bedrooms were, like many an Earth dwelling in the 23rd century, like a glass box with clear-cut panels on every side, above and below. Framing these were ginormous curtains that blocked out any sense of sunlight or community. How very Earth-like, I thought to myself, to live closer to your neighbours than any other species, and yet do your best to pretend that you couldn't see them. Moving the curtains, I peered out past them and onto the destruction that had been caused by the aliens. Though Geraldine told me that these quarters were several miles away from Downing Street, it was still covered by the enormous shadow that the alien collection of buildings had created. Oddly though, this mismatch of styles and shapes seemed to fit pretty well with what had clearly already been here. Looking out, I could see that every other house in this area looked much the same, with these modern constructions awkwardly perched on top of buildings that were clearly many centuries older. To me it seemed as if the whole planet was like this, and I felt my human side pull at the idea of fashions with their oddities and their freshness and their now, even as I felt my Mrasianart side tug at me and fill my thoughts with projections of order and cycles and traditions and past. All the time I found myself thinking, thoughts constantly whirring through my head, worried that this planet I was a temporary guest on might be about to be permanently annihilated, with all the culture and history that was clearly here under all the modern trappings, gone with it, in an instant. I stared out self-consciously, aware suddenly that I was an off-worlder on the one known planet left that didn't take kindly to strangers, worried about who might be looking back at me. So instead I rolled over, and stared at the ceiling instead, where only the occasional passing monorail car disturbed my gaze. Something made me leave the curtains open, though, as if trying to commune with this mysterious planet. The land of my mother, and the place I knew least well of all in all the universe, or a half of it, at any rate. I wished Geraldine was here to comfort me through this fog of hopelessness and helplessness, but she was off trying to track down her extended family and friends and check they were all right, or at the very least alive. I'd offered to go with her, but Geraldine had just looked at me sadly and shaken her head, telling me as gently as she could that in their present state seeing any form of alien life might lead her kind to shoot first and ask questions later. Having never felt more like an alien right now, and not feeling worthy of meeting anyone, I acquiesced. So instead, here I was alone, trying desperately to keep the painful thoughts at bay, while my new friends all got what rest they could. I could see the silhouettes of some of them stuffed into their own glass boxes, particularly Auntie C, who barely fitted into hers. It was still a better sight than what greeted me on the walls of the room. I'd heard about how unflattering Earth mirrors could be, but this one in particular made me look young, ugly and stupid, and altogether ill-equipped for a heroic mission. All the things I felt inside. Sighing, I went back to sit on the bed that was lumpy and hard, but at least it had normal pillows this time, and a minibar full of snacks, which I quickly emptied, starved as I was of gluten. My human side seemed determined to comfort eat, and I felt no reason to stop it, so I ate like a Dewsbury giant who'd skipped lunch, stuffing crisps, crackers and peanuts into me, while I thought. So far every action I'd taken towards these invading aliens had been made with the thought that, even if my colleagues at the IPO hadn't believed in my capabilities, at least my wife had, and nobody's opinion mattered to me more. Now though, I knew her opinion of me was just like everyone else's on Decreeta, that I was an idealistic, naive upstart who knew nothing and had achieved even less. I could see it all now. All the things I thought I had been achieving on Mars were all due to Alioth and Altair, really. I'd just been there to make up the numbers, and got what I was because people pitied my background after learning about it from Insurgents. No wonder they wanted me to leave for another planet. They probably pitied me too, were tired of me hanging around and getting in their way. I hated pity. It served no purpose. I'd seen it on the faces of everyone around me growing up, from those closest to me to complete and total strangers. All my life it had felt as if people were giving me some sort of special treatment to make up for everything that had happened to me as a baby, when all I wanted was to get on with my job and be judged equally alongside my fellow politicians and Mrasianarts. I hadn't asked to be different. I hadn't asked to be special. I hadn't wanted any of this. I'd only done the best I could in honour of my past. and someone should have told me long ago that my best simply wasn't good enough. Somehow, though, a whole planet and many universe of people treating me as someone to lead them had led me to take on things I should never have gone near, to believe that I could do things that no one else could do, that I could unite a universe that had, since the day of its creation, been destined to crack and break and collapse and fold in on itself, the gulf between our very different cultures too wide to be filled in by the likes of someone small and insignificant, like me. After what was probably several hours of floating these thoughts around my head and levitating, I gave up and decided to get some sleep. Somehow, though, somewhere in the distance, as I dwelled on these unhappy thoughts, I heard my name being called. No, not called, chanted. Was it Echo? No, it was outside my head, not inside it this time. Nervously, I got up and looked out the window. There was Geraldine. Far from hiding away from me, as I admit I'd secretly assumed, she brought a whole great group of Earthlings with her. Some of them were clearly her relatives, and they looked just like her, the same intense, almost Mrasianart stare melting into a wide, fixed grin of hope. Others were Earthlings who looked nothing like her, and I marvelled again at how a muddy brown planet as insignificant as the Earth could have created such a wide array of life, full of different heights and builds and skin tones. Dotted amongst them were the others, who had joined us on our mission so far, their distinctive alien features sticking out of the melee like crazy paving. After the shock of who was chanting, I began to hear what they were chanting, guarded and ready to shrink back again immediately if they were crying out for help or insulting me. Instead they were chanting one thing, over and over, and it was something that warmed me like no other phrase possibly could. Eleron, you are not alone, we are with you, we are better together. Eleron, you are not alone, we are with you, we are better together. Eleron, you are not alone, we are with you, we are better together. I stayed there, staring out of my window, with a smile on my face, and tears in my Humrasianart eyes, as more and more humans turned up, until they filled the entirety of the window, and I had to lean out to see everyone. Many of them had been homemade banners. Aliens are our friends, well, except the ones who were trying to kill us. I got your letter, President Eleron. I never thought you'd actually write to me.
I voted for you in the past. I will vote for you in the future. I am rooting for you now. Roots, Mum, they gave President Eleron 2 hearts so he could care for all the universe, not just his planet El High. Sometimes the greatest presidents really do come in small packages.
Thank you for giving us hope, President Eleron. Before too much time had passed at all, I could no longer see everyone, even leaning out of a window, and reluctantly I had to pull myself back in. Still they chanted, Eleron, you are not alone, we are with you. So I delivered my speech again, for what turned out to be one last time, to the applause of a planet that I had long considered the biggest enemies of the IPO, but who seemed to want, perhaps even needed, peace more than any of the others, whatever their politicians said. In the space of a day I felt as if I had been on a roller coaster, having lost the love of my life, but gained thousands of new friends. I stayed like that for some time, trying to let this moment soak in so I could remember it often, as friends and strangers both helped start to put my broken heart back together.
Universal entry, Ours, 854493649647. Mars Universal Systems Key Code, acting, President Eleron. Headline, Mission to Earth, slight return, 5, retrieved from Universal Records Office.
I woke up with renewed vigour. This, after all, this was the key to my plan, the idea that sometimes, when the stakes were high enough to warrant it, the universe could put its differences aside and work together. I wasn't asking anyone to believe in me as a leader per se. That wasn't what my election had been about at all. I was asking everyone to believe in each other. The only thing that was special about me was if I was somehow a conduit for the change that everyone wanted to see, the cooperation they secretly yearned for. Geraldine met me for an early breakfast. I hope you didn't mind last night, she said. I know how private you are and how easily embarrassed. But I was worried for you after the shock of yesterday and didn't want you to get the wrong impression that everything you'd worked for had been for nothing. When my family and friends heard you were here, they wanted to show you how much being here meant to them, and we gathered up a lot of strangers along the way. They all really thought they were going to be abandoned when the aliens turned up. Earth has a habit of being abandoned, especially by the IPO. Geraldine, I was so moved, I couldn't tell you, I said emotionally. So much of our plan relies on people working together. I was so worried when no one from Earth seemed to be taking any notice of our plan, not like all the other planets. Well, apart from Abridas, I guess. A sudden thought struck me. Oh, Geraldine, the human part of the sculpture is here. The newspaper turned it into a competition and had lots of entries on condition they built it straight away. I was sent a photo of the winning entry and it looks really good. Apparently it's waiting for us by our shuttle, so that's another problem solved. Terrific, said Geraldine. I have good news too. Did you hear there was a riot yesterday? No, I said, trying to balance the bovine dairy produce I had been given on top of some local disc-shaped food items apparently called bagels on my plate. Nobody hurt, I hope. Just some bruised egos, I think, said Sherilyn. A group of people who read your article heard that the millionaires were refuelling their golden-crusted rockets and went and commandeered them. They're all ready to fly to Decreeta when we give the word. They stripped all the gold off the outside of them and gave it back to the millionaires. I don't think they were too happy about it. Well, I said, it serves them right in a way. We can always have the gold restored later. Geraldine put down her tea mug, oddly not drinking straight out of the teapot the way Auntie C had once taught me to. Do you know, I think that's the first mean-spirited thing I've ever heard you say. At least it's about millionaires, I suppose. What do you mean? I asked, more out of curiosity than rage. Well, said Geraldine, you usually see the best in people, long past the point where most people would have stopped and assumed the worst. Like who? I asked. Oh, anybody. Everybody. Your IPO colleagues. Your wife. I still remember the interview when you stuck up for McGrumpus, even though we'd been really curt about you minutes before. Never mind all the rude stuff Doris and the other Earth leaders said to you. That's why so many people came last night, because they'd been convinced you wouldn't risk your neck for us when you didn't have to, and after all the mean things we said about you. I shrugged. It wasn't the people saying that though, Geraldine, only the leaders. And I learned long ago on Mars to never judge a planet by the people on the stamps or on the coins. Maybe the universe just needs a hug sometimes, especially the parts of it that keep being left behind. It's more than that, said Geraldine. It's as if you see, deep down, why people do the things they do, and rather than judge them or overthrow them, you find empathy with them. It's a rare gift, or at least in this side of the universe. Thank you, I smiled, not used to getting this many compliments. I'm not sure that's enough, though. I mean, I understand where all these species are coming from, but it's about the same thing as uniting them. I feel a lot better now thanks to you and last night, but I'm still not quite sure what I'm doing. In all the scenarios I planned in my head for my time as intergalactic president, war was never one of them. Geraldine smiled back. Just do what you always do. Speak from your heart and inspire people as much as you can. The rest will follow. You don't need to do all the work for everyone. Just be an alternative to the greed and the self-centeredness of the rest of the universe. And show everyone that it doesn't have to be like that all the time. The right people will gain strength from that and find their way. People like me. Geraldine stared at me with Mrasian-like intensity. You don't have to be perfect, Eleron, or have all the answers. That's not what any of this is about, and it isn't really why we voted for you. You just have to be you, unequivocally, uncorruptibly, you. Thank you, I murmured. I'm not sure I'd still be in this fight if not for you, your wisdom and encouragement. I'm still amazed that anyone was listening. Oh yes, said Geraldine, just as intensely. I was listening. You're special, Eleron. Important. I rambled on. I don't feel special and never have though. It's strange. I always felt driven to at least try to do something special. You know, I always thought that I'd do something truly incredible that no one had ever done if I tried really hard. I knew that I could never solve the world's problems or cure great illnesses. Anyway, the Clandestrols and Mechions together have rather put an end to that. I thought, though, that I'd still do something none of the 80 quadzillion people in the universe had ever done before. But I don't know, invent a new colour or display some new emotion that no one had ever had before, or invent a new note on the tonic scale, or my hair would mutate into some new species of animal. Part of my heritage growing up as the universe is only Humrasianart, I suppose, on a planet where hybrids were rare. I always felt as if people were looking at me, singling me out, expecting me to do something great. Or maybe it was just my backstory, that people felt they knew me because of my name, or my parents, and their sacrifice. I was, after all, born into a universe that was changing at such a pace, so soon after the discovery of so many new creatures. The thing is, though, the older I've become, the more the universe has shrunk somehow. It seems as if everything in the universe is pretty much set in stone, and even if a new something comes along, it soon gets absorbed into the humdrum routine of life pretty quickly, and becomes a decoration, almost, rather than a fundamental change, so that we're always left with this compromise where nobody really gets what they want, except the select few who distort things to their ends. There was a time when I thought that Airglow and I were both the most different, exotic, unique creations the universe had ever seen, and that we represented this new and exciting future we could all have. But in the end, we both turned out to be ordinary, our faults exaggerated by our hybridness, rather than our strengths. Even though we both looked as different from our parent races as anyone can, sharing half their genetic material, in the end we were no more special than anyone else. "No, Eleron," said Geraldine, "we need a leader who thinks he's nothing special, but he's one of us. That's what makes you so different to the corrupt Belobrats of old, and your colleagues looking the other way. You have a vision that benefits practically everyone, but the people with power are the exceptions, so of course they're going to stop you at any costs. It wasn't one of them that travelled halfway across our side of the universe to try to save a planet that didn't even fall under your jurisdiction anymore. It wasn't a ruler, or a king, or someone who felt it was their right to be born to rule. It was you, a flawed idealist who only wanted a better life for everyone, whether he knew them or not. That makes you the perfect person to lead us, Eleron." I grin. You know, somehow that means all the more, coming from an Earthling. Geraldine pauses and looks back at me. "Eleron, I've seen the basics of every planet now, and thought it might allow me to view my planet in the same way as others see it, but I still can't work it out. What's your impression of us? Honestly now, you're not making a speech. There's no need to be nice just for the sake of it." I thought for a while, wondering what to say that wouldn't hurt this most faithful of companions, and trying to think of just the right word. Finally I found it. "Division," I said. "Everywhere we've landed has had its problems, many of which your planet doesn't have. You humans got lucky in terms of the size of your planet and its nearness to the sun, and all those rich resources you had and have. But the others, at least, all felt like one planet pulling in the same direction. And the Earth still feels like lots of different tribes, all pulling in different ways, and not thinking about the bigger picture. Even your leaders have managed to displace and distract you so that you're always looking over your shoulder for people trying to take from you what they already have, especially the other worlds who have only ever given things to you. After all, without the gift of the Mechions, your world would become a resourceless fireball, or at least the parts that hadn't already been flooded. Without the gift of the Clandesprods, you would still have lived shortened lives hit by poor health. Without the Intergalactic Treaty signed by my Belobrat predecessors, many of you would still be poor, even poorer than they still are now. Yet nobody stops to fight it. You are so busy squabbling amongst yourselves. Of all the places we've been to, Earth strikes me as the one with the greatest potential, but you're also by far the biggest self-saboteurs in the universe. I still love your planet to pieces, though, because I see how some of you strive for greatness brilliantly, selflessly, speaking out against the injustice on your planet. Individually, you're amazing. It's when you get together you're insane. Still, though, the worse your leaders throw at you, the greater your art is, better even than ours. I so adore Earth music best of all, and I've heard pretty much everything the universe has to offer by now." "Me too," said Geraldine. "It's so good to have seen a revival of our music from the 20th century become a hit around the universe again. It really is timeless." "Yes, and speciesless," I said. "Funny how the best art always is. We're all fighting the same struggles after all, even if some of us fight them in different ways. The Earth is fascinating, really. All that good and evil growing up side by side, where you're not quite sure which is which. Even I can't tell which way any of you will go at any given minute. Mra's always had a special bond with you, though, and not just my family. We've always found you lot fascinating to talk to. It's like you're the only other complex species out there, when everyone else is busy eating or sleeping or hiding under tables. I love you humans all the more after last night, too. It's not like I got that reception on any other planet." "No other planet ever needed you quite as badly as we do," nodded Geraldine. Just then Auntie C walked in, colours in her hair and a teapot in each hand.
"Oh, my dear," she said, "we've been waiting for you. The shuttle is all ready to go, and the Earth sculpture is already in the back. I guess we don't have to ask where we're going this time, Eleron. There's only brass and a quick hop to Ducius, and then our journey is at an end. I can't quite believe the last day is here already," she wails, knitting away furiously. "My little Eleron, all grown up and going into battle. It's terrifying, frightening, horrifying, mortifying, petrifying, stupefying.
Is there an earthly representative too? Geraldine asked nervously. Someone higher up than me. We have the perfect ambassador from Earth with us already, I smiled. Anyone else would only get in the way of the orders I take from you. Geraldine returns my grin. A toast. No, I said, confused. Crumpets, wasn't it? I remember reading about these on the Universal. Geraldine laughs. No, silly, with your glass. It's an Earth custom. To us, she says, as she clinks a glass into mine, and Auntie C joins in. Lovely jubbly. Now it's my turn to pass on a traditional Earth farewell greeting. Take care, everyone, and mind how you go.
Universal entry, boards, AB 54493649629. Miles Universal Systems key code, acting, President Eleron. Headline, mission to browse, 1, retrieved from the Universal Records Office.
I was grateful to have delayed our visit to Mars until near the end. Visiting all the other planets had felt like some kind of warped pleasure trip after talking about how much I wanted to travel the universe. But going back home reminded me just what was at stake on all these worlds. People's homes, families, friends, loved ones. History and culture built on and added to by quadrillions of generations. I had of course long dreamed of returning to Mars as a proven president, dignified and respected, at least by somebody, with Airglow proudly at my side. Instead I was returning as a fugitive on the run. I was also rather afraid that, even though I managed to get the rest of the universe to take some form of action, I would fail on home soil, where my failure would hurt me the most. Mars had such a long tradition of pacifism, and the events in Insurgence had only encouraged that feeling even more. The first sign of trouble, and I knew Mrasianarts would be tactically fleeing, perhaps outrunning the glad hardets to hide under the table. Even so, I breathed a sigh of relief when I saw the familiar sign leading the way to Mars, of having the constellations in the sky back to their rightful positions again, where I was used to seeing them. One side of our sign led out into the night sky where we had just come, and included the phrase, outer space. The other side led to the planet, with the words, inner space. At last, after a long time of not knowing who I was anymore, and shedding so many of my past beliefs along the way, I was home. I looked forward to things being different on this planet, of knowing where to land, of knowing my way round, knowing who to contact, and knowing that, of all the inhabited worlds out there, mine was the one I could guarantee would have taken this threat seriously, even if everyone here turned out to be too inside their own heads to do anything about it. A certainty that lasted a few seconds. What happened? I said aghast, as it became clear that something very wrong indeed had happened on Mars. Everything's topsy-turvy. My homeworld's been turned upside down. Maybe they decided to redecorate after you left, said Geraldine comfortingly. But Auntie C knew better.
My dears, this is awful, dreadful, terrible, appalling, dire, willful, horrible, hideous, altogether most hideous. Mars is such an ordered planet, with everything laid out neatly in rows, and everything tidy. Now it looks more like Earth, all jumbled up together. No offence, she concluded, looking over at Geraldine. Auntie C started nicking again in a panic. What could have happened to cause such destruction and devastation? Even during the time of Insurgence, nobody ever heard of the planet itself. It would have to have been someone hugely powerful to have caused such wanton destruction.
All 10 of us in the shuttle looked at each other, thinking the same thing.
It's a grey alien. Decreeta.
Asked Horatio.
That's the only logical conclusion.
Nodded Quincy. It's just like Earth, said Geraldine. Buildings piled on top of each other.
But how could they? Continued Auntie C. It's Earth they've declared war on, not Mars. This is a peaceful planet full of beings who would never have raised a wing in anger, not for anything.
What do you?
Said Mrasianbrat. I swallowed. It's all because of me, isn't it? Because Mars is my home planet. These aliens want to frighten me. They succeeded too. Well, they're not going to stop us, said Geraldine, quickly coming to my defence as always. You didn't declare war on anyone, Eleron, and if you had, then we would all be facing this level of chaos right now, not just Earth and Mars. The shuttle flew on in silence. Everywhere was so well signposted, but I didn't even have to tell Jennifer where to park. Alief was there at the terminus, gasping for breath and looking the worse for wear.
I saw you coming into land,
He said.
It's not safe, Eleron. All of you take off again, quick!
Jennifer squeaked and hid under the seat. Why? I said to my old friend and former boss. What happened here?
He came a few hours ago. We couldn't stop them. They hovered in orbit, gave us a warning about how you needed to sign our planet over to them, and something about chucking berries at parrots or something. And then suddenly all our 3- and 4-story buildings were hovering in mid-air. We were placed in a giant heap on top of the town hall, which I guess must be the tallest building here. It's a lucky thing for us that no governmental sessions were sitting in at the time.
Anyone injured? I asked, but thankfully Aliev shook his head.
We're still going through the rubble, but we don't think so. And according to the Universal, everyone has been accounted for. Thank goodness we've got that clause in where families can only have 2 stories to each of their houses. We seem to have only destroyed our tallest buildings, but they're all workplaces. Nobody was in those at the time.
Where is everyone?
Asked Auntie C.
Altair? Bertie? Jeremy?
No,
Said Aliev.
fled, I think, or home anyway. A lot of shuttles got away in a panic after the aliens arrived.
Without telling you? I asked. Aliev looked at me sadly.
It's been really hard without you this past week, Eleron. It's like our usual unity disappeared on my shuttle with you and Egler. It's been impossible trying to keep people together. Even when your broadcast asking for help came through the Universal, everyone seemed kind of half-hearted and defeated. Not like the olden days. The alien invasion fell at the last straw, splitting us apart.
I looked on sadly as a crowd of Mrasianarts gathered, some angry, some sad, most puzzled and confused. So different to the loving and enthusiastic group of people that had seen me leave at my party. I'm so sorry, I said. This is all because of me, I know. I had intended my voice to carry over to them, but to my shame the words got stuck in my throat. I wouldn't have been surprised if even Aliev hadn't heard me.
Never mind about us,
said Aliev.
We're fine for now, but you're all in danger. Their spaceship wasn't far ahead of yours. They made it quite clear that this was a warning to you. You have to flee quickly. Oh, the Mrasianart stone sculpture neck we have ready for you as per your instructions.
No!
Said Quincy to our surprise. Ignoring the looks pointed his way, he added,
The logical thing would be to stay as far away from these alien creatures as possible. If they've just been to this planet and couldn't find you, then chances are it's the last place we'll look for you again.
He smiled at us, and a thought flashed through his mind.
Shooting was not a trap.
He said sadly. Jennifer rolled out from under a seat and pointed at the fuel gauge.
I'm afraid we have no choice. If you used up all the sunlight from Vigorous Free, I need to refuel if we're to make it to another planet.
That's settled then, I said. We might as well rest before the big showdown tomorrow. Egler stood next to the food replicating machine in the dark, her heart pounding, the door shut behind her. Bob's sacrifice had been far dearer than she had intended, and she felt immensely guilty. She wasn't quite sure if her plan would work. However, living alongside Eleron for so long had encouraged her to be brave, to put herself in unlikely situations for the sake of others. While Egler had never had to be courageous before, Eleron had always been around to do the scary things for her. She was in a rare position of being the only person here who could save everyone. Not that Egler particularly cared about the IPO staff, who she felt had been wicked and cruel to her, but she wanted to save herself, and somehow, unlikely as it may have seemed, she wanted to save Eleron. So she waited until everything had quietened down again before making a move. Agonizingly slowly, hoping the noise wouldn't be so loud it could be heard, she wheeled the replicated machine towards the door and felt for the right button, hoping her shaking wings wouldn't press it prematurely by accident. Egler peered through a crack in the door, willing the hive creature with the biggest gun to walk right in front of her. She couldn't press the button yet, though, or the food would merely reflect off the door and hit her in the face. Her nerves jangling, her wingtip shaking. How did Eleron do this sort of thing all the time? Though she supposed even he never had to face an actual alien horde. She was still the bestest then when this was all over. Egler steadied herself and prepared herself by concentrating on her surroundings and staying in the moment. What was that awful noise? Oh, she thought, it's just my 3 mouths breathing, and nearly laughed to herself. No, don't lose focus, Egler. Concentrate on the task in hand. It's nearly there. Just walk a bit further. Turn slightly. Now! Eglo kicked the door open with such force that it nearly came off its hinges. The hive were taken by surprise, and while they were preoccupied, in one instant decision she jammed her body up against the door so that it wouldn't close again, and pressed the button on the food replicator, spraying the hive member nearest to her with an endless supply of marshmallows. As the onslaught came to an end, the other 4 hive members rushed her, so Eglo pressed a few other buttons at random, and an endless stream of gravy, hundreds and thousands, and a habitat delicacy that looked like purple custard spewed out of the machine and across of them, sticking them to the ground. Momentarily safe, Eglo ran for the IPO and untied Horace, her wings really shaking now. She glanced sadly over at the remains of Bob's corpse still lying on the floor. Odd how guilt should hit her for the first time ever in her life, right at the moment of her greatest triumph. Given the above events had only lasted a few seconds, Horace was rather overcome at first, but the moment his hands were untied, he yelled,
Well done, Eglo!
and ran for the hive, stuck to the floor, with marshmallows, grabbing his gun. He pointed it at the other 4 Agrosian hives coloured in custard. Simultaneously, the hive let out cries of,
What? Help! Somebody's after me! Oh, you know, this actually tastes quite nice.
and a lot of spluttering noises that were unintelligible in any language. Eglo managed to untie the others in the IPO too, who one by one joined her in untying their comrades and taking the hive's weapons until they were all standing next to Horace and staring at their enemies.
Nobody move,
said Horace, rather unnecessarily as it happened, as a combination of marshmallows and custard had stuck everyone to the floor. Gosh started to sniffle.
Stop that!
Said Horace, who was one of the few races not to have noses, and never understood what other species did with them when they got emotional.
You didn't hear any of us stealing you were taken prisoner, did you? You and our brave friend that you murdered.
We're going to die.
Well, gosh,
You're not going to die.
said Eglo.
There's nothing dangerous in any of those foodstuffs, you know. Oh, they are toxic to us anyway. I rather presume they wouldn't be to you.
No, it's not bad. We're all going to die.
Well, gosh again,
We're not going to shoot you, you know. Not if you behave yourselves anyway.
said Horace more kindly.
You don't understand. Queen Calixta's going to kill us when she returns.
Well, gosh,
She can't stand failure over the slightest thing. And this is a big thing. A very big thing. We're all going to die.
That doesn't sound like a good leader.
said Odabega.
Why do you work for such a wicked tyrant?
Gosh blinked, not understanding the concept. Posh spoke in his place.
What do you mean, why, oh aliens? Do you mock us? What choice do we have? We've always had to work for Queen Calixta, or one of the forebears, or pay the ultimate price for being useless to her. That's just the way the universe works, indubitably, don't you know?
Not our half of the universe.
Snorted Eglo.
We live peacefully alongside each other, working together when we can under one kind benevolent ruler who takes his orders from us. Or at least,
She finished more anxiously.
that's how things are meant to work. I rather think we've got that wrong ourselves recently. Well, that's how we're going to work from now on if we ever get out of this mess.
Said Horace.
No more corruption.
Said what?
I'm going to see Horace. We have no choice. Set us free. Maybe we can live alongside you in this half of the universe and keep you safe from Queen Calixta. What a great idea.
Said Gosh.
Prepare away.
Said Dosh.
Just let us have a brush up first.
Said Wash.
It was only survival.
Said Tosh.
Sorry,
Said Horace.
I want to believe you. I really do. But I don't dare set you free, not just yet. You can prove to be loyal later, but we will work together, I promise. But for now, I can't forgive the ruthlessness with which you all tried to kill us. Having you as prisoners might persuade Queen Calixta that she's lost too. Bob gave his life at this moment, and Eglo risked everything too. I'm not going to throw any of that away.
We understand.
Said Posh.
Just please show more mercy to us than we did to you. We're sorry about your friend. Please, while we wait, tell us about the way things work in your universe, and we'll tell you about ours. Maybe that way you will realise why we acted the way we did. Be a good sport, Governor.
Horace screamed at the others.
I think President Eleron would approve of that. Okay, you first. How did you end up working for a ruler like your Queen Calixta? You were all so scared of her.
Invasion.
Said Gosh simply.
My people lived happy, simple lives on a planet named X-Clan. Nobody ever disturbed us till Queen Calixta came along, so my ancestors say. We have a giant book of the Hive that has chapters of every species she conquered. You think that there must have been hundreds over the centuries, many of them extinguished. My kind thought it was better to work with her, rather than against her. I can relate to that,
muttered Jane from where she'd hurried away under a desk.
Same with us.
Said Posh.
Only my planet was called Pontific Apophylos. Why what was he called us?
Said Dosh.
Ours was Agrosians,
Said Wash.
I'm told mine was Joke of the Quadding.
Said Tosh.
Wait, you really were all from different planets originally?
Asked Horace.
But you all look so similar.
Really?
Said Posh.
Our Queen doesn't like us to have differences, so we only mate with who she tells us to, and to make sure that her genetic profile is always stronger and purer. What about you? When did Eleron conquer each of you?
Horace laughed.
Conquer? Eleron? Oh, this is going to take some explaining. It looks as if there really is a universe-sized hole between the way we work. Listen, there's this thing called mating.
Universal entry pause 854493649694. Mars Universal Systems keep going. Acting President Eleron. Headline Mission to Mars 2 retrieved from Universal Records of it.
I went to survey the damage on Mars, Alief and Geraldine at my side, and soon wished I hadn't. It was devastating to see so many familiar places broken and bent, as if someone had rifled through my memories, taken all the places that most meant something to me, and then thrown them all into the air at random. It was as if the buildings had just been picked up, then dropped, crumpled, and I once again had the feeling that my past was wiped clean without permission, preventing me from ever going back to the life I once had. Though it didn't look as if anyone had been hurt, and I knew that as president I should be putting on a brave face and feeling thankful that it was places that had been affected, not people. I still felt demoralised as I walked amongst throngs of curious Mrasianiarts who had lost their homes or their jobs and come out to see the damage. I particularly felt it with the places I knew, the town hall I had worked in for most of my adult life, the house that Aglo had lived in before we had moved in together, the fountain memorial of my mum and my dad, who was now crushed beyond recognition. Well, I knew the plan had been to wipe me out, in a way the Agrosians had done the next best, or even the next worst thing, attacking my loved ones and destroying all the places that had once made me who I was. My own house, the family home where I had been born, had been spared, perhaps because it had been a modest two-storey building, but I was still near enough to the grief of losing homes to empathise with my fellow Mraz natives. This time it seemed wrong to deliver my usual speech, as everyone at home already knew the price of failure, and were very much behind me. So instead of speaking this time, I listened. I understood well my people's fury and their calls to drive me to stamp out the awful people who did this to us. I understood the way their anger had turned on me as president at having so far been unable to do anything to stop them. I understood their confusion that people they had never met had been driven to attack them, and how much this hurt them as the purely innocent party. Mostly I shared their sadness for the universe that had till recently seemed so progressive and hopeful. I suddenly felt as if it had all gone backwards, and that far from dreaming about a better future, we were left nervously looking over our shoulders and remembering the past as a golden age. I would have understood if they were angry at me for involuntarily causing this to happen on my watch. But strangely, they weren't. I would almost have felt better if they had, that I could have been of some use to them as they vented their fury. In truth, I had fewer answers and probably they did, but I knew it was my job to soothe them, and that for once I would be speaking on a planet where people actually knew who I was. We couldn't allow ourselves to think the bad guys who might win, not when I knew there was more of us. We were good out there, even if we were used to having our voices silenced. So with Alief, Geraldine and Auntie C at my side, I spoke. I talked to everyone at great length about how my hopes for the future had not yet come to pass, that all my greatest beliefs in the idea of a united universe had been dealt a severe blow, that I knew that whatever happened next, this would be a day that would change us all forever. But I also talked to them about everything I had seen in my travels, the people I had met who gave me confidence that we were up to the challenges fortune had placed in our path. I admitted everything that had happened on Decreeta, figuring that it would only come out eventually anyway. But I also talked of how my belief that the Earth had deserved our help had allowed me to become the only one who escaped, and why I didn't want to squander that luck on handing myself over, when that would only ever result in more unnecessary deaths, or the self-servingness of running away. I talked more about our plan, how I hoped that these beings' ignorance of us and the way our half of the universe worked would yet be our saviour, of how we might yet win through sheer numbers, as these aliens wouldn't be expecting us to work together. I realised while I was talking just how unsure I still was of our plan, the one that I had made 8 brave souls so far travel all the way across the universe for, and how I had had to be honest that I didn't know if it would work at all. I admitted to everyone as honestly as I could that I was scared of what had happened to the people closest to me, and of what might yet happen to me if Queen Calixta found me. I confessed that maybe I hadn't been a very good intergalactic president at all, and I wish I'd never stood at this dratted elections so that someone else could be coping with this right now. But I also told them that I had been sure that deep down long term, I was right, that my biggest doubt about all of this had been whether the planets would agree to work together, and that all of them, without question, had been behind us. Far better, I told those listening, to be a collection of 10 planets working in union and failing than conquered colonies conscripted into fighting by another and succeeding. I said that I could guarantee them nothing, but I still asked them for help when the time came, and that this time was soon. Speaking from the heart to a group of people that I sort of recognised on the world that I adored, my speech hit differently somehow. It wasn't that Mars and its people mattered to me more, or anything like that, but it was easier to imagine just what was at stake on this world than being amongst strangers. "That was perfect," whispered Geraldine as Alioth took over my speech. "Your best speech yet, just what everyone needed to hear." "Really?" I said, still doubtful. "Oh yes," said Geraldine, "you were what a politician should always be. Honest, but hopeful. We don't get enough of those on Earth, I could tell you. They're usually sarcastic and lying." Alioth told me something similar after he had finished speaking and handed the platform over to Auntie C, who was busy telling a lengthy story about going back to her old cave on Ziggurat 3.
I want to come with you, Eleron,
he said. "Can Mraz afford to send you?" I asked, knowing full well that my boss had no obvious replacement since I had left for Decreeta a few days earlier. This whole adventure really started such a short time ago, I thought.
Can we afford not to?
Alioth replied.
If we lose, well, from what we've seen, we won't stand a chance. Maybe honest. This is it, Eleron. Everything we do matters. There are no second chances from here for any of us.
His words rang in my head as I stared into space. This was it then. The big showdown was coming. Had I got this right?
Decretion times.
The Decretan Daily.
Intergalactic Decreeta server. Decreeta unavailable. Decreeta daily newspaper has been cancelled for today.